Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? If I could remind everybody, please, just to put yourself on mute
Hello.
at the start of every meeting. Thank you. I'm just doing another test, an audio test. Can everybody hear me okay? Is that any better? Or is it still quite low? That's better. Thank you. We'll be starting now in about 2 minutes. Just give people an opportunity to settle into the meeting, and then we'll formally recommence the county development plan. Thank you.
Hi, just to remind you, we need all cameras turned on at all times. Thank you.
Testing.
Good morning, members, and everybody else who's present. We're going to recommence the County Development Plan meeting. Just like to check if everybody could switch on your camera, please, if you're participating, if you're a member or people who are actively participating in the meeting, and ensure that your microphones are muted unless you're speaking. If you wish to speak, please indicate using the raise hand icon, and we'll be able to see that you want to contribute. Again, just indicate that you can hear me. Okay, thank you. So as soon we're just about to start. Rory, you had your hand raised just a second ago. Did you want to say something before we start? You just need to unmute yourself, Rory.
I was just letting you know I was receiving you loud and clear.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, it's very loud. So if everybody is ready, we have a quorum. So there are some members that aren't present. We have apologies from some members as well. So we'll recommence. So if everybody the agenda was circulated to everybody for the recommencement of the special planning meeting to recommence today at 10 o'clock. And item number 1 on the agenda is that Meath County Council determines, in accordance with the standing orders and the decision it took on the 8th of June 8th, 2020, to hold its statutory meetings in alternative venue in the interest of public health, to resume the adjourned special planning meeting in virtual location, and to similarly facilitate the participation of members of the press and public as provided for through the provision of Section 29 of the Civil Law and Criminal Law Acts 2020 and a standing order in order to comply with the latest public health guidelines. We have a proposer for that, so we just have a proposer via the hand raised signal. Councillor Riley and Councillor O'Connor. Thank you. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
So Councillor French, you indicate you wish to speak. Please unmute yourself, Councillor.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Cahir. Look, in my opinion, Zoom is not suitable for these meetings. And I think for the importance of it, I don't know what should be done. I understand where the council is coming from and they want to get the plan done. But in my opinion, it is just not suitable. So I will leave the meeting now and would appreciate if that's recorded in the minutes.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Councillor Meath.
Thank you, Cahir. And this is my first time on Zoom with these meetings, so it's a new adventure. I suppose, like what Councillor French said, coming from Lobanstown in an area with no broadband, I have a serious difficulty with today's meeting. I want to thank Meath County Council that they have facilitated me. I am here in Railway Street. I think I'm the only councillor in Railway Street. But my iPad, and maybe others had this difficulty, has suffered from IT problems. I want to thank the IT crowd. Since 9 o'clock this morning, they've been working on it. And just at 10 o'clock, I started receiving all the emails the councillors received on Friday, on Thursday. So I'm only reading them now for the first time. And I believe it puts me at a serious disadvantage. Even to get access into this meeting, I need to get the link sent to me via Facebook Messenger. And so we should be aware that there has been serious IT issues out there on iPads. Yes, I want to thank, and obviously I respect what Noel French done, but I can't leave this meeting because it's so important, and the Drogheda Environs is in today's meeting. But I do want to point out that being a rural councillor without broadband, and then given the IT issues, to have leave me at a serious disadvantage today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Jackie, where?
Thank you, Cahir. Just to make 1 or 2 comments if I can, just before Councillor French uses, if he so chooses. Just in relation to getting the plan done, there's a legal obligation to get the plan done. And I think we've been through that a number of times. While we have some comfort within Section 1216 of the Planning Act, The Minister has commenced the legislation, as we would have said, whereby decisions taken by local authorities online are valid and proper. So for that reason, we have no option but to proceed. So it's not a matter of just getting the plan done from the executive's point of view or anything like that. It's legally you're obliged to proceed with it. And I don't see any way in which you can't not proceed with it. So just to be clear on that, and just to accept, Councillor Meath did have some IT problems this morning. We're not aware of anybody else. We had rang all councillors who hadn't participated previously on the, I suppose we've had, I'm guessing off the top of my head, just maybe at the moment, well, we've probably had 15 or 16 meetings in relation to the county development plan at the moment. Predominantly either face-to-face or the hybrid version. So for any member who hadn't participated online in any of those meetings, we contacted them last week to see if they had any IT issues and required any assistance. I think Councillor Meath was one of them and did say he has obviously Wi-Fi issues where he lives, so he is facilitated in County Hall. And obviously, Councillor Meath, separate issue got to do with the workings of your pad this morning, which now have been resolved. But I think any of the detail that you would have had possibly for this morning's meeting, the presentations that Sean is about to go into, and as is Porrick and Simon, they haven't been forwarded as yet. So I don't think you're in any disadvantage in that way. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you. And again, just to clarify the chain of events that took place here as well, to get us to here, we met last week, the CP, Councillor Bonner, I see you there. I'll let you in 1 second, is that okay? So we had met last week, the CPG and the whips met last week, and there was a strong discussion around this, and it was agreed by the councillors present and on behalf of themselves and on the groups which they represent, that we should proceed with this meeting. I understand that there's people who have a differing opinion than that, for a myriad of reasons, but it was decided in a democratic forum. The recommendation was to proceed. We are acting upon that recommendation, which is the decision that we're taking now this morning to proceed with the meeting. So the suggestion that it's not, that has been made both maybe here or in other forums, that is not a democratic process, is not entirely accurate. And that this is a decision that was based or that was made or recommended by the CPG plus the whips meeting. Although there was some alternative views expressed, the majority of the group decided that it was appropriate to move forward with the meeting, even though it's not ideal, it's not perfect, it's not what we would love to be doing. We have constraints around the fact that we have legal obligations, and we have the obligations to the county as well to get the plan, to allow the process to move forward. Again, and it is the reserve function of ourselves as councillors to do that, and we took that decision. And in all decisions that are made in a democratic process, it doesn't necessarily always suit everybody, but the onus is on the people who make that decision to try and facilitate the people who may have an alternative view. I believe that every opportunity or every action that was flagged as an issue has been an attempt has been made to address that in a practical and reasonable way. If that every attempt has been made, as demonstrated by Councillor Meath, the provision for a space for him to be able to participate, and anybody who has taken that additional difficulty with themselves, such as Councillor Meath, to travel down to participate in the meeting, is greatly appreciated as well. So it is something that we, as a reserve, within our reserve function, we are acting upon our reserve function, not under the instruction or under the guidance of the legal position that has been presented to us, and our position is thus. And we do recognise that there are people who have an alternative feelings to this, but we must move on with the process as far as we understand. Councillor Bonner.
You hear me?
Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, thanks very much. I just wanted to, I wrote to you and I just outlined my objection to having the meeting, having the county development plan meeting continue in the Zoom format only, and I think that what my proposal is that we should write to the minister and ask that the development plan be postponed or extended for 6 months. The timelines be extended for 6 months. And the reason I'm saying that is because in 6 months' time, as we know, the vaccine program has commenced, and in 6 months' time, things should have changed significantly and give us a better understanding as how we may get things be able to proceed. So I think that these are uncertain times and unprecedented. And I think that I'm proposing that we write to the Minister now and ask him to give us that latitude for 6 months. We're actually not the only county that's in the same situation. There's several other counties around Ireland that are in the same situation. So, and I also feel very strongly that our people shouldn't be excluded from the meeting by virtue of bad broadband, or that they're not IT literate, or for whatever other reasons. And as I said in my letter to you, it wasn't a prerequisite that when people got elected as councillors that they should have strong broadband connections, that they should be computer literate, and all the other reasons that people said they can't participate. So and just I think it's worth noting that this county development plan, I've been involved in a few, and this county development plan, we got engagement from the public that we didn't have previous, and I think that's recognised in the number of submissions have come in. So I think that we're doing a very good job so far, although that some of the issues that have arisen in our broadcast or in our meetings to date, in relation to who proposed what or who seconded what, they have become issues. So I think that the best way to do is when we're sitting around the table, or half of us or whatever, and I think that it's with a stroke of a pen, the Minister can do the sensible thing and say, listen, we'll extend this for 6 months. So I'd be asking for support of the councillors to support me in this and getting a communication off to the Minister as a matter of urgency. So thanks very much for that. And just by the way, that I wasn't, and I don't want to make a big issue of this at the time. I'll talk about it about some other time. I wasn't invited to the CPG meeting. I'm independent. I'm not part of a group, or I'm not part of a technical group. But there's nothing in the legislation that prohibits me from attending meetings of such. So I think that really I should have been invited, especially to a meeting of such importance. So, and I'll discuss it later on. But thanks very much. Bye bye.
Thank you, Councillor. With regard,
I'm not leaving the meeting. All right, thank you.
all right, thank you, Councillor Meath. You indicated there that you'd like to speak.
Yes, just simply to say, it mightn't get anywhere, but I'd be happy to second Joe Bonner's proposal that we do write to the Minister, given COVID and all of that, and do seek a 6-month extension. It may not get anywhere, but I do think it's worth doing, and I don't think there's any reason why the council should have any issue with sending such a letter. Thank you.
I think maybe that we could send the letter, but we must proceed with the meeting until we get clarification on that. Is that, Councillor Jackie?
Oh, sorry.
If you could take down your hands, lads, please, unless you'd like to come back in. Jackie?
Thanks, Cahill. Just to come in on Councillor Bonner's point, just if you recall, members, we did write to the department. We've had communications with them. October, November, we would have sent you the replies as they came in. But in that reply, it will be one signed by the Assistant Secretary, Maria Graham. It was quite clear that there is no statutory provision to be able to extend the timelines, and that was not government intent to do so. And I suppose it's even more borne out by the fact that the planning service has been designated an essential service by the government in the most recent lockdown. So the decision of government, in my view, won't change. Certainly, Cathaoirleach, if it's the members' wish, we can write again to them. But as it stands at the moment, the planning service is designated an essential services, and you have been given the facility to make decisions and do your business online and act remotely where it is appropriate to do so. So I just have to confirm that we've already asked for the timelines to be extended, and in the reply back to us, I think it was around the 9th of November, they would have indicated that it wasn't their intent to do so. If you wish, I can take Rory McEntee in on that matter too, Cathaoirleach, if you think it would be useful.
I appreciate what the CEO has said, but matters have got much worse since November, and we're now in a worse situation than we were in November. And the other thing is that we a vaccine program is in place. So I think that there's expectations that things will become better in 6 months' time. So I think it'd be the logical thing to do. And I think that we certainly should write to the minister and stress the importance of extending it out for 6 months, because the authority has, is at the minute we're under serious pressure in relation to other matters. So the development plan really isn't a matter of urgency. We've waited 2 years. We're 2 years behind already, and I think that nothing will be lost by extending it out by a further 6 months.
Thank you, Councillor Fox.
You can hear me now, can you?
Yeah.
Yeah, just a question to Rory. In light of the fact that we've some members actually have our institute sort of, well, they're more or less boycotting the meeting. Is there any legal implications for that down the track, or would we be leaving ourselves open if would some of the participants or some of the stakeholders in the development plan are we leaving ourselves open to legal threat? The fact that some of the members are basically boycotting the meeting.
We just bring Rory in on that.
Good morning. Just I'll start with Councillor Bonner's suggestion. As the Chief Executive said, you previously did ask and were refused. To accede to his request, it's not just a stroke of the pen by the Minister. It would require primary legislation, similar to what was introduced under Section 251A of the Act previously, when all planning timelines were frozen. The second thing is that while the Act does insulate the development plan from legal challenge because we mightn't have met the timelines, it does not insulate us as a council from legal proceedings by somebody seeking an order of mandamus, that is an order directing us to do our statutory duty. And our statutory duty is to progress the adoption of the development plan. So, Cahirlock, I think you're right. You have to proceed unless Councillor Bonner's request was acceded to by the government, which would require primary legislation. In relation to Councillor Fox's query, I don't believe the fact that some members have decided not to attend the meeting will undermine the legality of your process. Once you have your quorum, which you have, you are entitled to proceed with your statutory business. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Cahirlock. I just wanted to just correct, for the record's sake, we're not excluding, this meeting is not excluding any councillor from participating. Councillor Bonner said we're excluding people. We are not. We're following our statutory duty in going forward with the county development plan. The people who are not online, and my recollection is that there's about 22 councillors, I think, on board out of the 40. They have chosen not to participate in the county development plan, which is a statutory process. They were elected to take part as councillors in doing the statutory duties of a councillor. So I'd just like to correct the record there. No one has been excluded by this process. No one. Thank you, Cahirlock.
Thank you. Again, I just see Councillor French is still present at the meeting and has indicated that he wished to leave. Are you indeed leaving, Councillor, or are you not? Councillor French, you indicated that you were leaving the meeting, for the record. Okay, Councillor Bonner.
Yeah, just in relation to exclusion from the meeting, like people may be excluded from the meeting by virtue of they don't have proper broadband, they don't have proper, they can't use they're not IT savvy, or that they would prefer to be in at the only way to conduct their business is face to face. So that is the exclusion. It's
Sorry,
not.
Councillor, just to hold you there for a second. There has been every attempt to facilitate everybody who experienced IT issues.
Yeah, well,
The suggestion that every issue that was raised by people there hasn't been a genuine and serious attempt to meet people's concerns, and to suggest that hasn't taken place, or to not clarify that has taken place. It would be important to insert that particular element into what you're saying now, because there has been a genuine attempt to facilitate every person who raised a concern around connectivity, around technology, and information and documents and anything. And I understand that Councillor Meath may have had a problem with his tablet, but that problem would have existed if we were online or not. So, and it has been resolved. So we just need to not to move the conversation down one road or another, suggesting things may or may not have happened. All we can do is deal in fact here.
Yeah. Well, with due respect, I hear this is the first opportunity I've had to talk to you in relation to this, and I'm not making wild accusations in relation to.
No, nobody suggested you were. I'm just clarifying your point.
No, but I'm not. I don't want to get into this is an open forum, and we're here to discuss in an adult manner as to why the reasons as to why and why not this should take place. This is my opinion, and it's my honest opinion in relation. And this is the forum where issues like this should be discussed. And if right was right, I should have been at the CPG meeting also. But anyway, that aside, what I'm saying is that there is issues. People, councillors and members have issues in relation to the continuing of the process in this manner. And I'm just making those. I'm not. I'm not.
We have established that, Councillor. We have established, and it has been established on the radio this morning as well, and over social media over the weekend. So everybody is very familiar with the points. And if people have, Councillor, please make your point. Move to your point, please.
Yeah. And the other thing, like I'm on this Zoom. Like, how many people are on this Zoom call this morning? Like, what access have the public got to this to this meeting? And so those are things that haven't been properly trashed out. If we're going to continue in a process like this and conduct our meetings in the manner in which we're conducting them at the moment, and on my screen at the minute, I can see there's four people on the screen. I know I can reduce it down and scroll across and all that, but there's probably people that mightn't be.
You can go to participants as well. There's 49 people participating in the meeting.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that if we continue with the meeting or have a meeting in this format, there has to be an education around meetings, presenting meetings this way. We need to know who's in attendance, who's logging in, who's not logging in, when, and who is on screen. And I think that legend should be up on the screen all the time as to who is in the meeting. And so I think that's very important. So I think that there's basic issues there that we need to get ironed out and sorted out before, if we are to continue in this manner. And because we'll be exposing ourselves to all sorts of difficulties down the road if we don't do such.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you. But just for your own information, if you see participants, you can see everybody who's participating in this meeting by.
Oh, I know that. Yeah, but we should have a legend up on the thing, a list of
but you do along the side. You can see everybody who's participating in the meeting. Councillor Adenuga.
Yeah, just a second. Yeah, I think that they should be. It's not beyond the realms of possibility to put out the list there and to email the list to us of who is participating.
But you can see, Councillor, just by using it.
Like, there's a lot of people that we might know. And so I think it's important that if we've, because these are very, very important meetings.
Absolutely, but the information is available. The information Councillor, the information you require is already available to you via the participants button.
It should actually be in the attendance book or whatever, and it should be up on the screen as to who's participating.
Councillor, this information was last week or before Christmas. We had the same situation. That request was available. The participants were available before through a list, and you can actually see who's in the meeting here as we speak by looking at the participants. So we're going to move on to Councillor Adenuga. We're going to move on to Councillor Adenuga.
Hold on a second. Just in relation to proper protocol and proper procedure, I think it's important that we know how the Zoom meetings are going to be conducted and in what form they're taken. And I want to participate and I want to participate fully, but I want to know, and I also want to be able to answer questions to people who ask me when I, in the community.
Okay, Councillor, absolutely. And any information, any questions that you have, if you could forward those
No, but
specific.
we should-
We're not going to, Councillor, the information is available to you as for who's participating.
we should
Any
be
questions
told-
could be forwarded to the meeting's administrator.
We should be told this at the outset of the meeting, the same
But
as
you
you're going to
didn't
any
request.
other-
You didn't request that information when
No,
we're.
but-
Look, we're not getting into an argument. We're moving on. The information
there
is
is-
available. Councillor Adenuga, thank you. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Kahila. Good morning, everyone. Just two things. I just wanted to confirm that I know we're being recorded, and this is the first that our meetings have been recorded. So I was wondering for what purpose we're being recorded. I know some have mentioned that, yes, there were
You might go in
emails
on that.
to confirm that we're being recorded. For what purpose this is, just to be clear. Then the
Okay.
second thing is, I want to suggest that if there are people who are having challenges linking in to the meeting, if that's the reason they can't link in, then they could be, if it's a session, just to assist people, because I know sometimes the tablet can be a bit of a challenge. There can be a session, but that shouldn't be the reason people shouldn't link into the meeting. So they could be assisted. There could be a session organized for them that by the council to help them understand who's present, who's not, whatever it is they need to know. All that can be done in one session.
Thank you, Councillor. Just again, the clarity specific for that question with regards to the recording, and I know that Councillor Meath had raised the question as well. Maybe Robert might just clarify that.
Thanks, Cahir. Look, just to inform members, I suppose, that at your meeting on the 4th of October, the October monthly meeting, the council made a number of decisions in terms of how these meetings would be conducted. And that included that the meetings for the special planning meeting would be recorded for the purposes of verifying the minutes of the meeting. So up until now, the 16 meetings that we had before Christmas were recorded. And if you remember, that recording was a live feed to the County Hall, where members of the press and public could view that. And these meetings are similarly being recorded for the same purpose, and that purpose is for verification of the minutes of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Councillor Fox.
Thanks, Kahira. No, I was just going to point out the point that Robert was after saying we were already told about recordings of the meetings. So that was Robert has already answered what I was going to say. So thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Kahir. Look, I just put in one thoughts. Like, I think we've been very fortunate to have such a volume of public engagement, as already has been mentioned. And that's always going to cause challenges. I think maybe just important to recognize, even without Zoom or COVID, many people who work full-time were inevitably always going to find things challenging. It's very difficult to take so much time off from a full-time work job to take part in development, plan special meetings. Obviously, COVID and Zoom has changed these challenges and in some cases increased it. I understand how difficult it is for some councillors, as has already been alluded to. But that all being said, as a councillor, I think, as for me, I have to be led by the direction of the Chief Executive as to what our responsibility is, even on occasions that you might disagree with this. And I think as councillors, I think we have to do our best to meet these challenges. And that's something that I'll be endeavouring to do. While I might not be present at all the meetings, particularly those not specific to my MD, I will do as much as I like. And I appreciate all your efforts, Kahira, as well as the executive to do so.
Thank you, Councillor. So we agreed, and we show an agreement by a show of hands with regards to agreement to proceed with the meeting. If we could just make sure that by the councillors, just raise your hand icon, just to ensure hand function, yeah, just to ensure that people are in agreement to proceed. Yeah, it's just we have 11. We have that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Councillor Riley 15. Niamh Suhan 16.
A question.
Anybody? Yeah, 1 second, Councillor. 1 second, please. Anybody not in agreement? raise the hand using the hand function, please. If you could just, if you're in agreement, please take down your hand.
Sorry, yeah.
Councillor O'Reilly, are you, is your hand, is that a legacy hand from the previous vote? It is. Councillor Moore, you're objecting to the meetings taking place? Okay. So we'd like to know Councillor Bonner and Councillor Meath and Councillor French's. Before he left, he had indicated that he wasn't happy. But he's not voting on this, but he had indicated that he wanted to withdraw from the meeting. Councillor Bonner, you want to come back in there?
Yeah, can you hear me? Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Just in relation to the, I want to be clear on the, is the letter going to go to the minister?
Yes, we have agreed to do that, I think.
Okay, well, in light of while we're waiting on a response or whatever, yeah, I'd be willing to continue under protest, really. Yeah. So
Okay, but okay, thank you, Councillor. So we have resolved to send another letter to the minister requesting that we can postpone the meeting, but pending that permission or that change in legislation, we'll proceed with the meeting. Are we agreed? Great. Okay, so we just there has been a number of correspondence sent in to the chair with regards to concerns. I don't know if you want them read into the minutes, but they will be contained within the minutes from Councillor Fitzgerald, from the Sinn Féin group, Councillor Bonner, and they have indicated that they have expressed their concerns around the meetings and have indicated that some have indicated they will not be participating at this time.
I think
we'll take them as read.
No, I think just for the, sorry, Chairman, can you hear me there?
Yeah, I can hear you, Councillor, yeah.
I think for the record, we should know, and the public should know, who's participating or what councillors are boycotting this process, because I think that's very important. Because we as public representatives, we have, and we want to, we don't want sort of clouds over our development plans. So I think it's very, very important that the public are aware who are not participating or who has indicated they're not participating.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tobin.
Okay, look, thanks. I just wanted to start the meeting off with a positive note, and maybe if we could record the congratulations to Councillor Deirdre Garrity-Smith on the birth of her daughter.
Oh, we absolutely, that's a fantastic suggestion, but we might just keep working through.
No problem. The other thing I wanted to say as well is I'm the representative of the Ashbourne Municipal District in the CPG. That's the way it works, that we hadn't got anyone who was a chair of various different bits and pieces. So I was voted in as this year's representative, and I was the previous year's representative of the Ashbourne Municipal District. So I put that information down from the meetings that we had, and I asked for people's opinions. 5 of 6 people came back with their opinions. So I text that out to people. I could be blocked off somebody's number or something like that, I'm not sure, but I do try to get that information down to people. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tolan.
Thanks, Caherloch. I just wanted to note my my objection to writing another letter to the minister requesting an extension. We've already written to the minister and thought that I understand that was back in November, but at the same time, right now, I think it's important that we embrace the opportunity we have to continue working. We're very fortunate to have technology and the IT expertise there in Meath County Council to assist us in every way possible. We're all members of other organisations such as LMETB or Meath Local Sports Partnership, Point Valley Tourism, SPCs, and we're all continuing to do our business throughout this pandemic. I think that it's important that, we show the public that we are prepared to continue working and make it work, make it possible to do. And that has been afforded us by Meath County Council and by the IT department. Right across the country now, we're expecting our students to learn and be taught at home, online, using technology, every way possible. We've had our own principal point out the fact that Teams can be accessed on the PlayStations and the Xboxes, and so there's no excuse not to be able to access If there are broadband issues, I think that the council have assisted people with broadband issues. But look, I don't believe we should actually embarrass ourselves by writing to the minister again to seek an extension. Let's get on with this. In May of this year, I will have been elected 7 years and have not had an opportunity to have input into a county development plan. This is our first one, and I think it's been delayed long enough. There's no excuse now for anybody not to be able to participate and participate fully. So I don't believe we should write to the minister again. I think it would be an embarrassment to write again.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fox.
Yeah, can you hear me there?
Indeed, I can.
Yeah, listen, I'd agree totally with Councillor Tolan. I think we should move on, get on with the business we're doing. But I think it should be in public record. If councillors have written in to say they're not participating, I think we should read that into the record of the meeting, because the public have a right to know who's actually participating in this process or not. I think that's vitally important. But I totally agree with Councillor Tolan. I think we have to move on and seem to be doing our business. You know, we are in a pandemic. We have to make sacrifices, and this is a sacrifice. I mean, we all love to be in the one room with all our maps in front of us and our screens and all that, but it's not possible. So we just have to, we have a duty as public representatives to represent our constituents and do our work to the best of our ability under the circumstances we find ourselves in. So I think we should move on, but I think it's important that the public know who are the councillors who are refusing to participate in the process. Thank you. Here, look.
Thank you, Councillor Fox. Councillor Tormey.
Thank you, Councillor Cahill. Yeah, I want to support Councillor Tolan there. I think she's dead right. We should move on and we shouldn't be embarrassing ourselves by going back to the minister with another letter. Like we in Ashburn, it's become well known with the pandemic out there. We've no public park and we have a chance now to identify land for a public park in Ashburn. And I don't see why the people of Ashburn should be made wait another 6 months for that process to happen. So I'm saying we should get on with it now and not write another letter to the minister. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tormey. Councillor Drew. Sorry, Councillor, if you could just unmute yourself. Thank you.
Thanks, Gail. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm fully supportive of us moving ahead on the process as we are. I do feel to be perhaps maybe be conciliatory to the members, particularly those who aren't now at the meeting today and aren't aware of the decision that we have now made, that we should send out an email to them this evening from the executive or from yourself, advising that, you know, we have made this decision to proceed, and encourage them and invite them to participate. And if they have IT issues, would they please raise them with the IT department? But I do think we should be encouraging them to participate. As previous members have said, we have been elected by the people to represent them, and I think if we do that correspondence, we have openly said to them, look, here we are, we're proceeding. We're asked, we would welcome your participation in the process. Thanks, Gail.
Absolutely, thank you, Councillor. I think that's something that's an excellent idea. We will be forwarding the decision to this afternoon as soon as we conclude the meeting today. Councillor Meath.
Thank you, Cahir. And yes, I agree with what Councillor Drew said, and I fully agree with also that we should send the letter to the minister, and there should be no embarrassment. Look, I come from an area with no broadband. I've had to come in to Navan today to participate in this meeting, and in fact, my family are not happy about that because there's the fear that I might bring COVID, God forbid, I was to get it back. There's no fear of me bringing broadband back today, but there is a fear of me bringing COVID back today, and that's a genuine fear. And because of that, there's a genuine health reason there why we should write to the minister. And you know, we've talked about schools and different things there. The same children in my area can't participate in school online, but today this meeting is going ahead. And for me, someone who represents Drogheda and Southern Environs, which is going to be discussed today, that is very important. And like the maps and the motions that I have down here today are very important. And I understand there's councillors sending in letters, and I haven't seen any of them. I haven't seen any of the emails that were sent in. So I would welcome hearing why councillors in my district will not be here for today's debate, because it's so important There's a ring road I want to see put around Drogheda. There's playground areas, there's green areas. There's things that are super important and they're going to be discussed. And there's going to be councillors in my district not here for them. And potentially there will be votes here today that will massively impact Drogheda, and our local councillors will not be at this meeting. And, and that is shocking. And if there is a reason to be given, I would very much like to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cassidy.
You're here, can you hear me?
I can indeed, Councillor.
Here, look, first of all, I want to say is that anybody who's not here today, it's out of their own decision. They're not representing their own constituency. They're not representing their district by not being here. They were elected as councillors. They can participate at this meeting if they want to, but they've decided not to for whatever reason. Now, we're 45 minutes into this meeting and we still haven't started. And I would just say that we're talking about starting. Well, the way we're going on here now will not be started today. So I would ask, here, like, if it was possible, could we actually move on and start the meeting?
Thank you, Councillor. Again, just that's a valid point. I suppose it's important that at the start of this process, and it's a new time and a new way of doing things, that people have certainly feel that they have had an opportunity to express their concerns and have an opportunity to have those concerns considered. We also, and in the email that I would have circulated to ourselves, I indicated that we would be in a position to be a little bit more flexible with regards to the time. And that was one of the major benefits, I suppose, of moving online, is that we weren't constrained by the hour and 55 minutes as we were in the real world under the guidance that we received. So, you know, it's important that people maybe allow people to ease into the meeting a little bit. After today, we will be progressing as we would have under normal circumstances, with a little bit more patience and understanding for people who may have some issues that we're very much anxious that people do feel satisfied that they can and are having a fair hearing. The accusation that's been levied against us is that it's not possible to have a fair and robust discussion online. It's important that we show that it is. It's important that we show that this can function properly. It's important that we have confidence in our ability to do our job online, particularly when the concerns expressed by the councillors, primarily who aren't here, is that it's not a proper forum. So I think it's important that we do spend a little bit of time at the start to allow people to come to terms with the technology and to allay anybody's concerns who may have stepped up and come to the meeting, even though they have reservations about its how effectual it is. But it is important that we spend some time at the start, and in doing so, we can gain everybody's confidence in the use of technology to deliver this. We are the first local authority in the country to work through a county development plan this way. We have a significant amount of submissions to go through. We have a significant amount of discussion that has taken place in a different forum and format. And just to spend a bit of time. As you can see, even my answer is a bit longer than it normally would be. But I do appreciate what you've raised there, and we will be moving along at a reasonably normal pace once we move past this particular discussion point, which we hope to close out by maybe in the next 10 minutes, and then we can move on to the presentations as per our agenda. So there are a number of councillors who've indicated they'd like to make a contribution, and they will do so now. Councillor Fitzsimons.
Thanks, Cahirlock. And first, I'd like to just congratulate you, Cahirlock, on trying to run this as best you can. And in fairness, you've had tremendous patience. And to the executive, I think they've done a great job in trying to facilitate all concerned. It's important, presently we have to adapt, and to move forward, we have to adapt in the present times. There's no point sitting on how things were done last time round. It's a different time. The government doesn't stop running the country, and we're an extension of the government. We have to, we have to do what we have to do, and we can't pick and choose what we deal with. This is part of our function. I think it's imperative that we get on with the business of continuing to do our function. Those who are involved in this have chosen to be involved. I regret that some have chosen not to be involved, but that's their choice, unfortunately. We've made our choice, and I think we have to move on, and the sooner the better. Thank you. Thanks, Cahirlock.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Murphy. Councillor Murphy, if you just unmute yourself there, please. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
right. Can you hear me, Ciara?
Yes, indeed, Councillor.
Hi. Okay, Grant. I support the process. We need to move on with the business of the county development plan. It's been delayed long enough, and it's for the benefit of all. I just want to say that throughout this process, a number of councillors have been challenged by their work commitments. Some of them are working with shifts and at the front line and in professions that their shifts are outside of their control. So while there are a number of councillors who are going to boycott this process, please don't assume that because councillors aren't here this morning that they are boycotting it also. And they may not be here this morning, but they could be here tomorrow morning. So just try and separate the two, please, for the benefit of those councillors who are in support of the process, but just have to go to work. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there, again, that's a very valid point. There are a number of people who have, it would be important to re-emphasise that as per any meeting that we will be attending, that if we can't make it, generally apologies are sent in, and a number of councillors have indicated that they can't make it. So as Councillor Murphy said, the normal meeting etiquette remains the same. If you can't make it, apologies would be the general rule of thumb that we would try to use. And Councillor Bonner. Councillor, you just unmute yourself, please.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah, just I think in the interest of, to give everybody a say that it might be no harm to read out the communications that you've gotten. I don't think that they probably aren't that long, so I think it'd be beneficial to the meeting. That's my suggestion anyway. Thank you.
Okay, so we had a formal proposer and a seconder now to read into the minutes the communications. We have received 3 communications, I think. 4 in actual fact, 2 representing groupings, and then 2 representing individual concerns. So we read in the one from received, if you just take down your hand there, Councillor Bonner as well, so thank you. So we'd read in the one received from Councillor Fitzgerald on behalf of the Independent Technical Group. So it was received on the 9th of January. And it reads, Dear Cathaoirleach, further to the point or to the joint meeting of the Whips and CPG on Wednesday the 6th of January 2021, on behalf of the technical group, I wish to reaffirm our position that we will not be participating online in the County Development Plans meeting starting Monday the 11th of January 2021. It is our view that the meeting should be postponed at least until the end of January 2021 and then to review the situation. We firmly believe that conducting the County Development Plan fully online is not the way to go. The process we are operating to date was working well, and as some of my colleagues have stated in emails to Robert Collins, some tightening up of the arrangements could be made to allow the process to continue. It is regrettable that one of the very few reserve functions which county councillors have is now being treated in this way from Monday 11th of January 2021. Please have this email recorded in the minutes. Regards, Brian Fitzgerald, Whip. That is one of
Chairman, just to clarify that, they're not actually representing all the independents, are they?
It's representing the independent group. No, there are other independents who aren't represented within that technical group.
But you yourself are in that group, so it's not representing everybody.
Well, I'm here. So,
yeah,
but I suppose over the course of the discussions, because of my position as Cathaoirleach, I haven't really been involved in the discussions that have taken place within the groups, just to ensure and to maintain and to attempt to maintain not only my perceived but also my impartiality around the meeting. I would see my job as Cathaoirleach.
I would expect, yeah.
My job is to I was elected by 89% of the chamber, and that I feel as an obligation to reflect that cross-party and cross-grouping representation, as is the role of the Cathaoirleach. So and I do appreciate Councillor Fitzgerald's approach in recognising and respecting that impartiality as well by not including me and not. So that's something to be recognised with Councillor Fitzgerald's approach as well. It has been along those lines always, as people would expect. Councillor Fitzgerald has always respected those guidelines. So just to, also with regards, there was an email received from Councillor Eddie Fennessy. As you know, he's the whip of the Sinn Féin group, and it reads as follows. It was sent to myself and Robert So dear Cathaoirleach, further to the joint meeting of the Whips and CPG on Wednesday the 6th of January 2021, on behalf of the Sinn Féin Group, I wish to reaffirm our position that we will not be participating online in the County Development Plan meetings starting Monday the 11th of January 2021. It is our view that the meeting should be postponed at least until the end of January 2021 and then to review the situation. The review of the County Development Plan is the single most important piece of work that we will undertake as councillors over the next 6 years. It requires full, undivided and involved participation that is simply not possible due to the ongoing restrictions. Consideration needs to be given to members' ability to participate in meetings of such importance. Conducting the meeting online will not afford members the opportunity to engage in the process. It is regrettable that one of the very few reserved functions of County Council is now being treated in this way from Monday the 11th of January 2021. From Monday the 11th of January 2021. We would appreciate if you could record this correspondence in the meeting. Lamass, Councillor Eddie Fennessy, Councillor Michael Gallagher and Councillor Aisling O'Neill. There was also correspondence from Councillor Bonner. You happy for that to be read into the minutes, Councillor? Yeah. So Councillor Bonner, Cathaoirleach, I want to put on record that I'm against the proposed, this was also circulated to all of the members. I wish to put on record that I'm against the proposal of the development plan meeting to continues online only. My proposal is that the resumption of the CPD meeting should be postponed until after the summer. We should write to the Minister asking that he extends the deadline for the preparation of the plan by 6 months. In 6 months' time, we should have more of an accurate idea of how things are progressing with the vaccination programme, and then we can hopefully proceed with our full responses, with full resources to have the plan prepared with participation of all members. It shouldn't be difficult to get cross-party support for the proposal. In my opinion, it is unfair and undemocratic to exclude any members of the public from engaging in the preparation of the CPD for any reason. The correspondence you're receiving from councillors shows that many have grave concerns about the availability of holding the CPD meetings as proposed. The concerns must be taken on board, and we cannot exclude anyone who is entitled to be at the CPD meeting. It is not prerequisite of being elected a councillor that you have good broadband connection or that you have computer literate. Members should not be excluded from meetings on account of these issues. There are several other reasons why the proposed format is not acceptable, and these reasons are clearly outlined in the various mails you receive from members on this matter. Regards, Councillor Joe Bonner. So they're the main emails. The rest of them are they're the main. They are by and large the main vein of the correspondence. With regards to people's opinions, they are reflective of the kind of cross section of what people feel, and everybody who has a correspondent their feelings have been reflected in one of those three correspondence. So as any other councillor would have indicated who may have sent an email, their views are reflected in the correspondence of the whip of their group. So that's why every single email is not being read into the minutes at the moment, but certainly the feelings of everybody is represented by that. And Councillor Bonner, you indicate again you wish to speak.
Just very quickly, I'd also like my correspondence to be included in the minutes.
Oh, it is, yeah, it is, absolutely, it is, yeah, thank you. And also, Councillor Golden wished his apologies to be recorded in the minutes as well. So I think that we have spoken at length now on this, and I feel that we've come to a stage where we can move on to the next item in the agenda. I think we could put in another element just underneath that now that we have agreed to proceed with the meetings. As Councillor Tobin had indicated that he wished to pass on his congratulations to Councillor Deirdre Geraghty-Smith. I think on behalf of us all, I think it would be very important that Councillor Fitzsimons receive our condolences at the passing of his father, who was a great man. I think that it's important that Councillor Fitzgerald know that in these difficult times our thoughts are with him and his family, and that his participation in the meeting is greatly appreciated as well at this what can only be a difficult time. So are we happy to proceed? Okay, so we're going to, unless anybody, sorry, we take an opportunity because it's been a number of weeks since we were here. If anyone else has any wish to express any personal congratulations or condolences at this time, it might be the opportune time to do it, and then we can move on. Councillor Tobin.
Sorry, just condolences to Councillor Jerry O'Connor from all of the Fine Gael group, and I presume everybody in the chamber on the passing of his mother. on a lighter note,
We
congratulations.
just, Councillor, we keep.
You're going to do the.
Yeah,
No, that's no problem.
Let's keep.
I was trying to speed things up.
No, Councillor, we're not in an attempt to speed anything up. Councillor
problem,
Jamal would also like to express our condolences to yourself on the passing of your sister. It's important as well that you know that our thoughts were with you at that time as well. Would you like to speak?
Could I just quickly just say something when I have an opportunity, just to thank you and everybody who contacted me, who texted me, who phoned me, who sent me a mass card. I didn't get around to answering texts or some of the phone calls, but I really, really appreciate it. And I just want that put on the record that I really, really appreciate everybody. The support that I've gotten has been just fantastic and very appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And so we'll, Councillor Tobin, you wish to congratulate somebody?
Yeah, sorry, just that it's the ladies football team that won the intermediate championship. That was it. There was a local involvement here, obviously in Ashburn. The captain was from Ashburn here, but a tremendous achievement and after many attempts. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks. Again, we're going to keep it to the business of the council immediately. Is that okay? Just to, rather than push it out across, they're specific to our members as well. Is that okay? Councillor Fitzsimons.
Thanks, Cahirlock. I'd like to express my condolences as well to Suzanne and Jerry as well on the loss of Suzanne's sister and Jerry's mum. And to you all, really appreciate the amount of texts, messages, phone calls, and the feeling of goodwill just that generated from everybody in the county council, members and executive, to those who turned up on the day. It was a huge source of comfort to us as a family, I suppose, especially in the present conditions when, you know, it's amazing to think as a councillor that I never shook a hand over the 4 days after Dad died, you know, which is, would it ever happen to anybody in politics? It wouldn't, you know. So everybody who got in touch, it's so appreciated, you know, and it really offers a huge amount of support to us. And I know that Dad was a proud county councillor. He thought the function of being a councillor was so important. And at times we probably think that, you know, what we do isn't, you know, not saying it's frivolous, but it's not appreciated, but it's usually appreciated. And even something small like walking down to the church and seeing the mayor with his chains on, you know, meant so much. And to all the councillors who just expressed their condolences, I have to say the peace and comfort it gave us was enormous. So thanks to every one of you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Councillor. So I think that we'll move on now on to item 2 that's on our agenda. It's a presentation from Sean. And I suppose also just to go through the motions and of course the ethics element of it as well that we start every meeting with as well be important. So Sean.
Thanks, Cahirlock. Just call it up now, members. Members, just item number 2 relates to the procedure for submitting notice of motion. When this has been emailed out to you already, and it's just to, I suppose, reaffirm it from our point of view. In terms of the soft copy notice of motion, they must be submitted to cdpmotions@meathcoco.ie. The reason behind that, members, is that inbox will be manned by everybody. So if you send it to individuals, should something happen, there is a possibility that your notice of motion wouldn't be dealt with. So cdpmotions@meathcoco.ie, and it is only the motions sent into that one that will be considered, just to ensure that we do receive everything. Notice of motion should be strategic in nature and relate to county development plan matters only, and not matters that are more appropriate for other plans, such as the schedule of municipal district works or possibly local area plans. And again, we would have highlighted this previously. Notice of motion must be clear and concise with respect to what the Chief Executive has been asked to do. And again, members, just to reaffirm that there's a legal perspective in terms of what you're doing now at the minute. You're changing something and there must be a paper trail in terms of how something has resulted in a change. So there must be clear and concise in terms of what the Chief Executive has been asked to do, and must be clear and concise as you yourselves may be asked to vote on that matter.
Notice of motion must contain a reason as to why the Chief Executive's recommendation is being amended. If the notice of motion relates to a land zoning matter, then the site must be clearly identified on the relevant map. And we've received 6 over the weekend, and that has worked okay. So that could be a case of taking a photograph of the site, of the map once you identify it, and just attaching it to your email. If the notice of motion relates to sorry, that's the one I've done. Each member must or will receive 3 copies of the settlement maps relating to their MD. Beg your pardon, sorry. Members, can you see that presentation? Now, is that better? Perfect, apologies. Each member will receive by post 3 copies of the settlement maps relating to your MD. Should a member require maps relating to another settlement outside of their MD, then please contact lheaney@meathcoco.ie and a copy will be sent out to you. And once you've marked on the map the site to which your motion relates, a photograph of the map can be attached to the soft copy motion and sent again to cdpmotions@meathcoco.ie. Thank you.
So any questions on that? Okay, and just again, we're going to take our time as much as practically possible to move through this to ensure that people are confident that they know what they're voting on and that they feel that they have had an opportunity to contribute to the point in hand that we're discussing at that time. So we will be, while we're not tightly tied to the 1 hour and 55 minutes as we were before, we'll still be trying to stick to our agenda. But there is some, we will be moving a little bit more considerably more over the course of it. So if you have a question, please do indicate that you'd like to get clarification on it. So we're just going to move on to the presentation from Alan Russell now, and we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach. I'm just going to give a brief presentation on an overview of the settlements. It's just important, I suppose, to provide a background to the settlement hierarchy, the core strategy, and also consideration of zoning submissions. So just a presentation overview. I suppose we look at where we are now in the development plan process, provide some background detail in relation to the core strategy, cover the settlement hierarchy, the local area plans, how we consider zoning submissions, provide some detail on the interactive map viewer, which has been available to the members, and just also touch on what Sean has on the procedure for submitting the notices of motions. So in relation to where we are now, the core settlement strategy has been accepted by the elected members. The draft plan zoning has been informed by consultations with infrastructure providers, and this is in line with the tiered zoning approach principles. At this stage in the development plan process, there can be no significant additional zonings. There can, however, be refinement of zonings, which would involve replacing and bringing forward more suitable developable lands, which would be based on a lot of elected members' local knowledge in relation to possibly lands that wouldn't be coming forward within the period of this development plan. Following the public consultation held on the draft plan, there have been 42 zoning amendments and a further 14 zoning amendments from the notices of motion. Those amendments relate to zoning only. There would also have been amendments in relation to the written statements for the settlements. So in relation to the core strategy, the purpose of the core strategy is to set out an evidence-based strategy for the future spatial development of the county, how much development and in what location. It involves a structured assessment based on facts and analysis and not on assumptions. It is a mandatory part of the development plan since 2010, and it provides an opportunity to coordinate housing and jobs with schools, infrastructure, public transport, roads and cycleways and community facilities. It is important to note that it's not just a numbers game. It is also required to demonstrate that the plan is consistent with the national and regional planning policy in the form of the NPF and or SES. So regarding the components of the core strategy,
It consists of the table, which has already been accepted by the elected members, the statement, which would be the core strategy chapter of the development plan, which has already gone through the process of the meetings. And I suppose what we'll be looking at over the coming weeks will be the maps, the zonings, in addition to the written statements for the settlements. Regarding the settlement hierarchy, the regional spatial and economic strategy includes a settlement hierarchy which sets out the settlement structure for the region. This identifies the regional growth centres, which is Drogheda in the case of Meath, and the key towns, which includes Navan and Meath. The position of the remaining settlements is to be established in the development plan process, and this has been done in the case of the draft plan. When grouping towns into each settlement type, consideration was given to recent trends in population, employment, and household growth, the level of services available in the settlements, and their ability and appropriateness to accommodate future growth. So this table just outlines the Meath settlement hierarchy. So from the regional growth centre down to the rural villages, the greatest proportion of growth will be accommodated in tiers 1 to 3, from the regional growth centre down to the self-sustaining growth towns, with more local levels of growth in tiers 4 to 6. In a lot of the cases from tiers 4 to 6, it'll be to catch up on employment and associated services such as community facilities. Regarding the local area plans, it's a mandatory requirement under Section 19 of the Planning and Development Act as amended to prepare LAPs for the following settlements: Navan, South Drogheda, Dunboyne, Ashbourne, Kells, Maynooth, Trim, Ratoath, and Bettystown, Latetown, Mornington, Donacarney. In addition, LAPs will be prepared subject to resources for Atboy, Dunshaughlin, Duleek, Enfield, Oldcastle and Stamullen. It's important to note that the function of an LAP is to take a more detailed look at a specific area, identifying and analysing the various issues of relevance in consultation with the local community, elected members and various stakeholders. And the LAPs will involve more detailed assessment of the 15 settlements which have been stated above, in particular in relation to roads, community facilities, open space, playgrounds, education, employment requirements, etc. So in relation to the consideration of zoning, submissions and notices of motions, outlined on this table are the factors to be considered. The first factor, I suppose, is need. The quantity must be clearly based on and justified by a realistic assessment of need. The second item is the policy context. The amount of land zoned for development and the proposed location is influenced by other plans and strategies, such as the Regional Spatial and Economic Strategy and the NPF. Once you've considered those two, I suppose you would move on then to the other items, which would be capacity on water, drainage and roads infrastructure. Regard must be had to the existing and future availability of capacity for water, drainage and roads infrastructure. Supporting infrastructure and facilities such as community facilities, healthcare, schools, public open space, retail and other service provision and public transport. Physical suitability, which would include the land's capacity for development and the physical suitability of the lands. This would include flood risk. The sequential approach, the zoning should extend outwards from the centre of an urban area, with infill development being encouraged as per the NPF and RSES. And also then environmental and heritage considerations. The zoning should take account of built and natural heritage designations, including the Natura 2000 sites and protected structures. Regarding the proposed amendments, there is a map viewer which was set up to assist the elected members in the review of the CE report amendments. It is presented as a side-by-side comparison of two maps which allow you to compare the land use zoning objectives in the draft plan with the proposed amendments set out in the CE report. You can search for and display proposed CE amendments in their related submission and settlement details. And both map 1 and map 2 are synchronized, which means that if you zoom in or zoom out or pan either map, the other map will mirror its location. So just shown on screen there is an example of a CE report zoning amendment in Navan. So you can see the site is outlined in red. On the left is the draft land use zoning map as per the draft plan, which went on public display. And on the right is the proposed Chief Executive amendment. So this mapping has been available to the members since last August, when the Chief Executive report was issued to the elected members. And it was subsequently updated on the basis of the notice of motions amendments which are involved in that document also. So it's a side-by-side comparison of the two maps. Sean has already detailed the procedure for submitting the notices of motions in his presentation. So they have to be submitted on the template form and sent to the motions email address as outlined on the slide, and utilize the official draft plan zoning maps. Hard copies have been posted to the members, and the zoning maps can also be downloaded from consult.ie as well. The map should detail clearly which lands are to be included, they should be outlined, and which lands are to be excluded, they should be outlined and hatched. And the motion should identify the relevant lands and send a picture scan or PDF of the map together with the completed motion template outlining the reason for the zoning amendment. So just in conclusion, the order of settlements being discussed over the coming weeks will be within each tier, will follow the format of the CE report. The core strategy settlement strategy has been accepted by the elected members. It should be noted that the evidence base, particularly the core strategy, which has already been accepted, is the primary consideration in relation to the residential zoning. The policy context requires zoning considerations to be consistent with the core strategy and the NPF and regional spatial and economic strategy. And just also to state that there can be no significant additional zonings at this stage, only a refinement of zonings. And the factors to be considered with new zoning requests include need, policy context, the sequential approach, the physical suitability, site servicing, supporting facilities, and heritage designations. So the last slide just identifies the settlement hierarchy again, and the meeting timetable is also just included there, which I suppose outlines when each settlement within the hierarchy is proposed to be considered. So I'll now just hand you over to Padraig, who will give a presentation on the ESRI report and ministerial guidance, which was issued just before Christmas.
Thanks very much for that, Alan. There's just a couple of people have indicated that they'd like to ask some for, so have a few questions. Obviously, Councillor Bray.
And Happy New Year to you and all the councillors and attendees here this morning. No, just on Alan's presentation, thanks for the presentation, Alan. Just two quick questions. One of the points in relation to local area plans, it said there'll be additional local area plans subject to resource being available. I tried to go through my notes there and I couldn't put my hand. That's something that maybe I'm wrong, but that's the first time aware that that those areas listed would be subject to resource being available. I presume there was going to be local area plans under those, and indeed I think Enfield was added as part of a submission by a member of the public. That Enfield was added to get a local area plan. So just some clarity around that. And then it's my first time going through this process, and just could we get, I suppose, a practical example of what is meant by there'll be no substantial zonings, but only refinement of existing zonings. I just don't fully give a practical example of what on the ground or within the maps of what we're talking about there. That's my two questions, Ciarán. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We might come back on that, Alan, and then we'll go to Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Councillor Bray. Just in relation to your second question there, I suppose in relation to no significant zonings, as you're aware, the core strategy has been accepted by the elected members, and that any residential zonings would have to accord with that. So in relation to, I suppose, A2 zonings, they would have to accord with the residential. The A2 zonings would have to accord with the core strategy, which has already been accepted by yourself. I suppose there is an opportunity for elected members, based on your local knowledge, you would be able to identify potential lands which are zoned which may not to your knowledge, be coming forward. So there is an opportunity, I suppose, to switch lands on a like-for-like basis. You could replace existing proposed A2 lands with new lands, basically. Again, they would be subject to the factors to be considered, which I outlined on the table. In relation to community zonings or tourism zonings or open space zonings, I suppose, again, a lot of that would be based on your local knowledge. If you think there is additional need and you can provide evidence to that effect. I suppose it is important, to clarify as well that in the 15 local area plans, we will be looking at more detail on public open space requirements and community facility requirements as well. So there will be another opportunity in those settlements to look in greater detail at those settlements also. Just in relation to the local area plans, it's a mandatory requirement for, I'll just go back to the slide here on local area plans. Just bear with me 1 second. So it's a mandatory requirement for the local area plans to be carried out for Navan, South Drogheda, Dunboyne, Ashbourne, Kells, Meath, Trim, Ratoath and East Meath. So it has to be carried out in relation to those. In relation to the second item there, it has been detailed in the draft plan that subject to resources, local area plans would be prepared for Atboy, Dunshaughlin, Duleek, Enfield and Old Castle and Stamullen. I suppose there was evidence backing up the proposal to prepare LAPs for those settlements. So I suppose they're more discretionary LAPs, which subject to resources we will also prepare. But under the first item, we have to prepare local area plans for them. The second point is more discretionary ones, and the evidence is provided within volume 1 as to why local area plans is proposed to be prepared for the settlements in the second item there. In relation to Enfield, I understand it may have been omitted from one of the objectives in error, so it may not have been included, but a local area plan is proposed for Enfield also.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ronan Moore.
Thank you, Ciarán. Just a question regarding the consideration of zoning submissions. And you had mentioned there was different factors that are considered. Can I ask, is that a hierarchy that you've explained there in terms of first need, policy context, capacity, water, drainage, road infrastructure, supporting infrastructure facilities, that it goes down in that order, or are they given equal weight? And if it is a hierarchy, is that something that the council had decided upon, or is that influenced by national policy? I guess the reason I asked the question, is that obviously some of those might be considered more important than others, but I think in the case of supporting infrastructure facilities, I think that's very, very important, as important as the capacity of water, drainage and road infrastructure in some cases. So the question is that a hierarchy that you go down one by one effectively, and if so, is that influenced by national legislation? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Moore, for that question. Basically, the factors considered come from the development plan guidelines, which are section 28 national guidelines. So that is the order they appear in the development plan guidelines. So that is the order, I suppose, which they are considered in. The first factor is need, and then goes on to policy context. So I suppose you have to comply with the core strategy and national guidelines first, and if it complies with those, then all the other considerations follow on from that. So it is national guidelines, that is the order they appear in the development plan guidelines, and that is the order, I suppose, we'd be considering zoning submissions in. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to item 4, the presentation by Pádraig Maguire, Senior Planner. Pádraig. If you just unmute yourself, Pádraig.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me clear there?
We can hear you, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much. I suppose just on behalf of the Planning Department, can I just commend the members today for agreeing to proceed with this process, because I think it's important to note that there is an economic value in terms of proceeding with it, and there's also an economic cost in terms of not proceeding. And I guess the longer we're tied up in this process, the less we get to deal with the nuts and bolts of developing our county. And I think it's very important to note that there's a lot of zoning objectives and policies in the new plan that many developers and the public are awaiting for us to adopt in order to proceed with developments. So I think I commend the members for agreeing to proceed today, and I just wanted to make that point, that it's important that we proceed with the development plan and get this process completed as expediently as possible. So thank you for that. In terms of the presentation, this could be a very complex presentation, so I'm going to try and look at just two elements of it. Is to just summarise the ESRI report and the implications of the ministerial guidelines which came out just before Christmas. There's methodology. It's a complex document, so I've attempted to make this presentation as simplistic as possible. So firstly, I'll look at summarising the ESRI report and its intention and what it's proposed to do. The intention of this document is to inform the local authority of housing provision and its delivery within the administrative areas, and specifically the housing need demand assessment. This process is to be undertaken by all local authorities throughout the country. Given where we're at in the plan, we have included it as an objective within our plan, and following the adoption of the plan, we will be bringing in a housing needs demand assessment as part of a variation to the plan under section 13. What I'd emphasise is that we have, accurately as possible, identified housing need within our housing strategy, and indeed the core strategy and settlement strategy in the development plan itself. So it's not that we haven't addressed it, this is all about methodology and how we address it. The second point there, this document assists in implementing the MPF population projections as well as the provisions of the Eastern and Midlands RESIS document. The report considers international population migration as well as regional population migration using a new model to account for such movements. So it's very much based on movement in and out of the country and in between counties as well. It also identifies structural housing demand, i.e. the number of housing units required per county, as well as types of housing units that are required. So it's quite specific in what it says about housing within our counties. Next slide there, a number of scenarios are outlined in this report, and we've just summarised these. The four key scenarios that are developed within the SRI report are: 1, the NPF scenario; 2, a baseline scenario, which very much looks at the existing trends of what's happening within each county; the third is a high international migration scenario; and 4, a low international migration scenario. So these scenarios are all developed and teased out within the report, but I've just simplified them and summarized them here for you. One of the key outputs from the report is that it will be necessary to provide an average of 33,000 units per annum across the country. I think there's an important figure that has emerged from this report, in that we obviously need to ramp up housing throughout the country in order to meet this target. So in order to achieve this, local authorities require a number of years to ramp up housing delivery to achieve this target. But this is very much geared towards those counties that are underperforming in housing delivery, and that is particularly relevant to the Dublin local authorities, where the housing need is greatest. Looking at the next slide. The document notes that at a national level there's a shortfall in housing provision, but this does not apply to Meath. And it's the reason being is that Meath is outperforming most other counties in the delivery of housing. I think this is a very important point, that Meath is one of the outliers in this, in that it is delivering housing and is one of the front runners in delivering housing at the moment. This may not necessarily be what the department and others want at this time. However, it's very much a necessity in terms of providing housing for people when we are still remain in a housing crisis. An important point to note is that for our current process is even at the highest international migration scenarios, so the scenarios I outlined in the previous slide, scenario 3 above, this could be accommodated within the provisions of our current core strategy and draft plan. And for emphasis, I have highlighted there that the implications of this is that there is no requirement for additional zoning. And I know this has been raised at previous meetings, that there was speculation as to what this report would outline, but I think it's important for us now, having had the opportunity to analyse the report, to state that we are performing admirably and better than almost all other local authorities in the country, and our draft plan is adequate to meet our housing need. It's more than adequate, in fact, to meet our housing need. So this report and the updated housing requirements are addressed in the form of Section 28 guidelines that were issued in relation to housing supply methodology for development planning before Christmas. So the department have acted on this ESRI report and brought out new Section 28 ministerial guidelines. And these are to support the ESRI report, but to outline the implications, and this is essentially the second half of my presentation. So what are the implications of these Section 28 ministerial guidelines? The guidelines, as well as the associated covering letter, which were sent to our chief executives and to all chief executives across the country, note and emphasise that the established NPF roadmap population projections for each county continue to be the population parameters for local authority development planning processes. So what that says is that the NPF roadmap, what we've always been working to, is the same document we are still working to. The methodology outlined here is about how we look at it. It is a new methodology. On the second point there, the intention of these guidelines and the report is to standardise the approach to population and housing growth, rather than the different approaches that are being prepared across the country by different local authorities. And what the national authorities are trying to do is basically standardise the approach as to how we provide housing within our local authorities. The third point, in addition to the provision of housing targets, the guidelines provide additional controls as to how and when the additional 25% population growth, as outlined in the NPF roadmap, can be applied. And this is very relevant to County Meath and the process we are currently engaged in. It is important, as I said previously, that we have already factored in that additional 25% within our draft development plan process. I've highlighted in the last point here. However, it must be noted that the housing figures provided in the appendices of the Section 28 guidelines will be very challenging for local authorities such as Meath and Kildare into the future, and that's beyond the transition period up to 2026. So it is our considered opinion at this stage that the key challenges, the real challenges, are going to be probably in the next development plan. We will be getting comments probably from the department, the OPR and others on the guidelines, but it is our view at this stage, given there is a need to ramp up housing provision throughout the country, that it's most likely the greatest challenges will be in the next development plan. Looking at the next slide there, from our analysis, it appears, as I've said, we are in a position to avail of the additional 25% growth, and that is essentially due to other non-performing local authorities in the country who are not delivering what their local towns and villages need. Meath, as I said, is outperforming, and that's why we can facilitate of this additional 25% growth. As previously outlined, the members should note that the headroom or additional 25% growth has already been included in our core strategy, and that's why we're essentially saying we don't need any further residential zonings at this stage, because it's already factored into our plan at present. We have gone further and recently engaged with representatives of the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage, and it is necessary that we are consistent with and consider these guidelines within the plan before it's finalised. I think as an executive, we're very much going to look at defending our position of where we're at now, but I do know that and would hope that there's no wholesale changes expected at this stage, as long as there's no significant additions to our zoning. It's expected that these guidelines will have to be addressed in greater detail at material alteration stage and or as a variation to the plan, and that's because the guidelines just came out before Christmas and we're only getting the opportunity to consider them now. So in order to conclude this presentation, I've just summarised a few key points here. The guidelines are an attempt to provide a standardised methodology to housing provision throughout Ireland, and that's all counties. So it's a move away from population projection targets to developing new and better informed housing provision methodology. And this is obviously trying to deal with our housing crisis and using the planning system to assist in ramping up housing delivery. The guidelines note that Meath County Council is one of a few local authorities in Ireland achieving its housing delivery targets, and the transition period I've referred to is that we're going to be allowed to continue to do that as part of our contribution to rebuilding Ireland and meeting housing need. It's for this reason that Meath Local Authority may be able to continue to provide housing in line with that at 25% above the NP figures up to this, we're using this transition period up to 2026. A detailed and evidence-based justification must be outlined in order to demonstrate the need for this additional 25%. And I suppose that is one of the key issues that we as an executive have to justify our position on the basis of the current plan, how we actually can justify this 25%, but that's a role and function for ourselves. And as part of this justification, I've highlighted again and underlined that there it is necessary to address how and where this additional population will be delivered. And the guidelines determine and outline that these additional units can only be delivered in locations with good public transport provision and only in existing higher tier settlements. So the important point there being that if this additional 25% remains in our plan, that it goes to our higher tier settlements. So as Alan outlined in the settlement hierarchy earlier, we're predominantly looking at tiers 1 to 3, where the majority of that zoning, which we already have in the plan, will remain. Finally, the key points are in the draft plan, the 25% headroom is there. We must ensure that we justify it to the department and the OPR. The department's also going to issue new Section 28 guidelines on the making of development plans, and we understand from our communication with them since Christmas that those development plan guidelines are forthcoming and will happen in coming weeks, month ahead. There's also additional training on HNDA and tiered zoning, which will be provided to help us understand and better incorporate the figures being provided here into our development plans. Point 3, the current housing trends and provision in County Meath will in future be very challenging. As the guidelines and the figures we are now being given, together with counties such as Kildare, which are considered commuter counties, will certainly be challenging. But for the foreseeable future and this development plan, we don't envisage any wholesale changes on the current status quo where we are. So the transition period, we need obviously to ramp up housing delivery now. In Meath, we have already done this, and as I said, we're outperforming most other local authorities in the country. So our position is good in that sense. And that concludes my presentation. So I'll just hand over to Q&A, discussion and Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pádraig. So we'll, as it said, we'll open up to Councillor Jerry O'Connor.
Thank you, Cahirlock, and thank you, Pádraig. Just a few questions, if I may, just to get it right in my own mind. The draft county development plan as presented to us, is in compliance with the RSESs and had a population target that I can recall of somewhere around 228,000. With this ESRI and the use of the 25%, does the population target for the county change if that 25% is used? And if it does, what would be the projected population of the county? And the reason I'm asking is because the RSESs and the National Planning Framework don't just look at housing. They look at infrastructure, they look at services, they look at transport. And if our populations was increase to 228,000 or anything above that, then it becomes very relevant that there should be a quid pro quo. If we're being asked basically to bail out Dublin, who can't because of the cost of sites, and we're to provide the housing for people working in Dublin, I think it's very important that the infrastructure, as in the rail line, roads funding, a regional hospital. I mean, you did mention probably good public transport, and the tiers 1 to 3. That's where the growth is going to be, and that's the Navan Dublin corridor, and the rail line becomes very, very important. And I think if we're going to facilitate national, put our shoulders to the wheel to deliver the housing, to help the Dublin councils out, I think we have to look at it seriously from ourselves as public representatives representing Meath, is that if there's no change in the rail line, if there's no change in increased roads funding, and if we don't get the likes of the regional hospital, we'll grow our population, but we'll have less money per constituent to spend on services. And we know we're the lowest council providing services per constituent in the country. So I think that point needs to be made and explored. But I will go back to the original one. I welcome the ESRI methodology, but I would like to know that if we get to a stage where we're using this 25% headroom, what would be the projected population of Meath County Council, or of the Meath County? Thank you, Pádraig. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Maybe Pádraig can come straight back in there on that.
Yep, Councillor O'Connor, I can confirm that the 228,000 odd population that we've targeted for the end of the plan period already includes the 25%. If we were to exclude the 25%, you're looking at approximately 221,766. So we have already factored in the 25% population growth into our plan. And as I said, we will robustly defend that, and hopefully we get to keep that. We will seek further clarification. And as I said, subsequent guidance due from the department on it, and the HNDA will clarify it. But I think it's simply the answer to your question. The 25% is included in the overall population. Thank you.
Thank you, Pádraig. Councillor Meath.
Thank you, Cahirlock, and thank you, Pádraig, for your presentation. I take from the presentation, and as I took from previous conversations, there's no wish for us councillors to start zoning more land. We move on to Drogheda next, but it'll be replicated in other places. In Drogheda, for example, I have land. There's land I wish to see zoned, but then there is also land I wish to see unzoned. My fear is that if depending on which motion is brought up first, if the motion is brought up first to zone the land, the argument will be put to me, we can't zone land. So should we take any motions that deal with unzoning potential residential land first, or should we take these motions kind of at the same time? Because I do genuinely fear that in the motions where we're looking to zone a bit of residential land, the argument will be made strong against us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Pádraig, you might just want to maybe clarify that,
Yep,
the order in which things can take place.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, procedurally, where motions are related to each other or to submissions, we'll try and take them together because it makes sense to do so. So procedurally, if we have a number of motions or a submission referring to one piece of land, I think it's important that we take them together, because it's not an order of importance, but we need to outline the members what's on the table and obviously be clear about what is to change or to be agreed. Regarding, I suppose it's important, Councillor Meath, is that we're tuning into if we can significantly add to the residential zoning, then we're looking at, if we're taking putting land in, we need to obviously look at where it's going to come out or where it's not coming forward during the plan period, and that's an important consideration. Regarding Drogheda, it's not so simple for the reason being there's a joint urban plan to do for Drogheda, which we have commenced with the relevant parties. So it will be a proposal that will not be significantly changing the plan at all. But I think we'll discuss Drogheda further when we come to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Pádraig. Councillor Fox.
Yeah, you can hear me there, Cahill. Yeah. No, Councillor O'Connor raised most of the points I was wanted to raise, and I'm happy with the answer on that. But one point I want to make is that when we see that as regards the RSI, that Dublin local authorities are underperforming. Now, for them to perform, a lot of the land they will have to use will be, and they've already started this process, is the Meath Road, all the industrial lands in the Meath Road and commercial lands in the Meath Road, the Dublin Industrial Estate, Glasnevin Industrial Estate. They will be all, the plan in Dublin is at the moment to change all those to residential, trying to move all that sort of commercial activity out of the city, out to the outlying county. So I think that's why in this plan, we need to ramp up our employment land zoning throughout the county, particularly in the south of the county and from Dunboyne across Tenfield. I think we have a massive opportunity there to grab most of these businesses that will be moving out. I think we have the roads infrastructure, particularly in the south of the county. We have a rail. We hear a lot about the rail line to Navan, but we already have a rail line to Cork and Tenfield. So I think that's something we must, as councillors, take account of when we are looking at our settlements. That any of the settlements in that area, that we look at industrial, make sure we have extra industrial land and employment land. And I think that's because this will have no rezoning or strengthening up the zoning we have on industry will have no relevance to the regional spatial strategies. It won't affect the numbers. I think that's where we can, and it'll have long-term benefits to us as regards race-based and as regards and the live-work environment, what we hear, which is part of our economic strategy. You live and work. You live and work in the one area. That I think we have to take, and it says as we head into our settlements now, I think that has to be a key point in our thinking over the next few weeks. Thank you, Cahill. Look.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Murphy.
Hi, thanks for that, Pádraig. It seems that the department is going to, given the current housing crisis, place a great importance on local authorities achieving their targets to try and supply the need. Now, you mentioned the higher tiers, and we have some very high housing allocations assigned to places like Dunboyne, Ruthout, Ashburn. Now, we have a number of sites in these towns that require roads to be opened up. I'm talking about the Life Path indicated road beside Dunboyne rail station. We also have roads in the Willows and Dunshaughlin and also Ruthout that are required. In the correspondence from the department, have they indicated any, given any, I suppose, assurance that funding will be front loaded or brought in at the early stages to open up the roads? We can't have a chicken and egg approach to our sites. Some of these sites have allocations of them of 800, 1,000 and more units. So they're a major part of our core strategy, and they can't be allowed to be delayed during the life of this plan. That's one question. I suppose the second part of that is that if the opening of the roads is left to the developers and it's a critical factor, I suppose, in their costs building the houses, we have to ensure the houses are affordable to people in the area, the young couples who want to buy them. The affordability point, especially in South Meath, is rising, as we know. And that's always a major concern to me. So that's what I want to be considered in this. And thanks for your comments there, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Drew.
Thanks, Caleb. Thanks, Alan and Paul, for the presentations. I just want to refer just to basically the final point or conclusion on Paul's last slide in relation to the transition period and the need to ramp up housing delivery, and that it would be significantly more challenging in the next county development plan. And I just get some clarification as to what he means there. Does he mean that we're going to have to, or whoever's obviously sitting on the council at that point, zone quite a substantial increased amount of land? And if that is the case, and we're doing forward planning, is there a case to be made for phase 2 zonings in our current development plan, or more phase 2 zonings, if I'm reading that correctly, the point that he's making? Thanks, Caleb.
Thank you, Councillor. Park, you'd like to come back in on that and on Maria's point as well?
Yes, thanks, Chair, and thanks, members, for those questions. Firstly, maybe I'll just make a comment on Councillor Fox's comments in terms of the potential for Meath and to utilise moving businesses from Dublin. I think the point's well made. It's correct and accurate. I think the local authority need to be very proactive in terms of engaging with businesses and engaging with companies who want to move. And I suppose my comments at the beginning of the presentation were exactly geared towards that. For the longer this goes on and we're tied up in this process, I know there's companies out there that want to speak to me, our staff, and economic development. So there is significant potential for us to bring companies into Meath. What we haven't been found wanting was zoned land. I guess it's in person, and to develop those relationships and work with the companies in terms of removing is what we want to do. So I think finally we're fit for purpose on zoned land. I think what we're lacking is the time and resources to get into this in terms of assisting those companies and giving them a face to work with. So the point's well made, but I think the sooner we get this process done and the land actually is owned and the process completed, the sooner these companies will get to talk to us with certainty of what the future zoning will be. Regarding Councillor Murphy's comments, yes, there is obviously the implications of any development plan and any zoned land is that there are infrastructure requirements in order to facilitate them. A lot of the infrastructure identified in our development plans, such as the roads, are developer led. That is very specific and categorically stated within the development plan. However, as we have seen, there are other government opportunities and there's a number of different types of schemes outlined in the programme for government. But one that has been successful for ourselves is the URDF funding. And we've also had LIHAF funding. And the URDF is essentially a follow-on from that based on town centre first policies. So there are money out there, and also I would emphasise to members that there's a review of the National Development Plan ongoing, and I understand submissions are due on that by the end of January. We will be preparing a submission to the relevant departments and government on the NDP and our requirements in terms of what's our key priorities. So we'll be outlining those to government in terms of what we need as a result of this development plan going forward. So I basically outlined this. Hopefully that answers Councillor Murphy's questions. The one key area I would state where significant infrastructure is required is exactly Dunboyne, where the transportation study identified significant infrastructure deficit in relation to numerous roads, foot and cycleways. So I think we as a council need to look and address those issues, and I guess we'll come to them maybe and discuss in further detail when we discuss Dunboyne specifically. In terms of Councillor Drew's comments and my final point in conclusion, I suppose he refers to phase 2 lands. Do we require more lands at this stage? If we're talking about residential lands, categorically, I'm saying no. And that's on the basis of our analysis of the plan itself and looking at the ESRI report. A lot of the existing phase 2 lands which we have are in lower tier settlements, and that's not where our growth is geared towards. It is very much geared towards our higher order settlements in terms of future residential and obviously employment, etc. So the simple answer to that question is that we don't envisage that we need any more residential zone lands. And you know, I suppose it's a very important point to note, and members note, that any significant additions to our residential zoning will be very much disputed with the department, and that was one issue that they clarified with us, that certainly the figures are challenging going forward. I suppose the one final comment I'd make in regards to why would the next development plan be more challenging. The reason I said that is that the figures that's provided in the department guidance present us with lower housing figures and lower housing allocations. And the only reason that we're going to be allowed the additional 25% I referred to and to continue on our current trends is that we're in the middle of a housing crisis. And we are handsomely and one of the best performing local authorities. And that transition period up to 2026, which very much mirrors the life of this plan, is that we will generally be allowed to continue at the rate we're going. But that does not lead to any need for additional residential lands.
Thank you very much, Pádraig. Does everybody feel that their questions have been answered? Just because we're just about to start with the move into the next item on the agenda, which is the discussion around Drogheda and the notice of motion. So, Councillor Tolan.
Just a very brief question, and Pádraig, thanks a million for that presentation. It was very detailed and clear. You did mention, or did I hear you correctly say, that you'd already begun the process of the joint urban plan with Drogheda? Can you just expand on that for me and tell me where we are at that, or what has begun? Is it just an issues paper that has started, or where is it? Thanks a million.
Pádraig.
Thanks, Chair. I guess it very much relates to the next topic we're going to discuss. So if that was all the questions on the presentations, that we might move on to Drogheda, because it's very much related to how we're going to conduct our business for Drogheda and how we consider motions and zonings, etc. So if that was the only question, I'll maybe start with that when we proceed.
Perfect. And Councillor Moore then. Thank you, Pádraig.
Thanks, Ciarán. And just more just from a clarification point of view, obviously with a virtual meeting we have more luxury in terms of time, so we don't have to leave after an hour and 55. Can I ask at the Ciarán and maybe from planners, in terms of what is the expectation as to what we might cover? Obviously we're moving on to Drogheda now. Would it your belief that we would complete Drogheda today and then continue going, or what's your thoughts, just to get a sense in terms of planning? Thank you, Ciarán.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, so there are a number of things that are going to occur. There's a number of notice of motions. We'll go through all that, and we'll understand fully by the time we commence the Drogheda tier. We'll know what we're going to do, if you know what I mean. So we're just going to move into that now. It will take very much similar format to all of our meetings to date with regards to the order in which we take notice of motions, and then notice of motions from the day, and then submissions. So it will take the same format, as you correctly pointed out, Councillor Moore. If we were operating under either the hybrid or the full in-person meetings, we would be finishing now. So we reached the hour and 55 minutes. So we would be finishing now, just to demonstrate again the benefit of the online forum. we are in a position now to move forward, to progress our plan more fully, and to allow people to have the opportunity to ask the questions that were not possible within the hybrid format, due to the fact that we had that hour and 55 minutes. So we can move forward now into the tier 1, and maybe Porrick and the guys from planning will give an overview of how it will run, so everybody is happy that they can foresee what we're going to do today and what we're going to have to carry forward to tomorrow, and so on and so forth. Is that okay? Thank you very much. So we hand you over to Porrick and his team.
Gahirlach, I'm going to come in here if that's okay.
Sean. Yep, absolutely.
Before I start off, Gahirlach, I just have to run through my presentation in terms of statutory obligations. So just going to share the screen with you now. I think the host has to let me share. Here we go. Can you see that now?
You
Hello?
just put it to full screen, Sean.
Put it to full screen. Perfect. Now, does everybody see that?
Perfect, thank you.
Yes,
okay. Thank you. Members, just the usual statutory obligations in terms of your role as members when deciding on a county development plan. Under the ethics framework, you're reminded of the ethical framework for the local government service, the code of conduct for councillors, and you being individually responsible for being compliant with both of the above. It is an offence if you fail to comply with some sections of the ethical framework. In terms of disclosure of meetings, when a matter comes before a meeting for consideration where you or someone connected to you have a beneficial interest, you must disclose to the meeting the nature of the beneficial interest before discussion or consideration of the matter commences. You must physically absent yourself from the meeting until the matter is concluded, and the disclosure and your absence from the meeting will be recorded in the minutes. You must then also advise the Council's Ethics Registrar in writing after the meeting of the nature of the beneficial interest so that your register of interest can be updated. Regarding the disclosure in advance of meetings where you will not be present at a meeting, but if you were present, you would have to make a disclosure, then A, you should make a disclosure in writing and furnish it to the Council's Ethics Registrar in advance of the meeting, and B, the disclosure shall be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. Regarding the planning legislation, members, you're reminded that in making a county development plan, members are restricted to considering the proper planning and sustainable development of the area to which the plan relates, and to the statutory obligations of any local authority in the area and any relevant policies or objectives for the time being for the government and minister of the government. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
And now, members, if you can see that, I'm just going to move into the settlement overview. So we're now commenced. Sorry, that's the wrong one. Beg your pardon. We're now commencing, members, I suppose, with the settlements. The very first one in the settlement being we're moving into volume 2 effectively of the Chief Executive's report, and the very first one being the Southern Environs of Drogheda. Councillor Tolan touched on it, and I suppose Padraig has mentioned that we will deal with it as part of this process. We'll run it in line with the exact same process that we did in the solstice pre-Christmas, and that is, I suppose, setting out the number of submissions we received with regards to each settlement, the number of motions we received with regards to each settlement, and the number of notices of motion we've received in advance of the meeting, additional notices of motions from the floor per se or via email now at this point. In relation to the Southern Environs of Drogheda, members, we have received 6 over the weekend, 6 notices of motions from the floor. It's generally priority that we would deal with the notice of motion from the floor first, because they are generally an addendum to the notice of motion that came in previous. But we just haven't had a chance to have a look at the 6 from the floor as of yet. We only saw them this morning. So if it's okay with yourselves, we'll move into the 6 notices of motion that we have received prior, and that they will be contained within the Chief Executive's report.
Sorry, just for one point, the members who would have submitted the notice of motions over the weekend, it would be important if they were to indicate to us now that they relate to the notice, if they reference the notice of motions that had been previously received. So if they can, would that be correct? Sean?
Yes, correct.
And it goes back to Councillor Meath's point with regards to the influence of a subsequent motion may have on one that we've already voted on. So if the members who have submitted the motion may indicate to Sean that there could be one may influence the other, that would influence our direction from now on. Councillor Meath.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach. In one way, my motion submitted from the floor will impact in that my motion from the floor suggests on zone and residential land, whereas I've already submitted a motion which looks to zone more residential land. So the one that we're probably going to come first, the argument could be made that we can't zone more residential land, but I would say we can if we unzone the other land that I'm suggesting in my motion from the floor. Thank you.
Could I then suggest, I know Councillor Meath, we have 2 notices of motion from you from the floor received over the weekend. We also, within the Chief Executive's report and the notice of motion submitted in October, contains, I think it's 3 or 4 notices of motion from yourself as well. Could I then suggest that we possibly defer your notice of motion until the next meeting? We can deal with them all then together, see which ones are maybe supersede the October report.
Councillor Meath, are you agreeable to that?
This is strictly in relation to the ones in relation to residential zoning, and just to be clear, not in relation to any of my motions in relation to roadways, playgrounds or such. I agree to that on the basis that we are going to discuss the others.
Okay. Councillor Tolan.
Just on the basis that it will influence the debate and the discussion around motions and submissions, can we get that update now on the joint urban plan from Porrick, just so that we can have the full picture before we begin debating motions and submissions? Thank you.
And Councillor McKee.
Yeah, I have a few motions there for this morning as well. So I'm just wondering, are they going to be dealt with, or how the urban area plan, how will that impact on the motions I've tabled? And yeah.
Sean, you want to go in there?
Yeah, we 4 notices of motion from Councillor McKee received over the weekend. And as I say, I suppose we haven't had a chance to have a look at them as yet, so it's hard to say whether they'll impact. In terms of the joint urban area plan, I suppose the update on that is the executives from both local authorities met in November via Zoom and discussed, I suppose, how we go about setting up some sort of a framework in terms of how we're going to move forward with a joint urban area plan. Councillor Tolan, you mentioned the strategic issues paper. We're not at that point yet, and we can't actually legally get to that point because the strategic issues paper forms part of that's when the clock starts. But we can't start the clock, I suppose, on an urban area plan until we adopt our county development plan. It was agreed by both local authorities that what we would do is we do some groundwork and background work in terms of, say, maybe transport studies, retail strategy studies, housing strategy studies, etc. And that's all that arose out of that meeting. We did have another one scheduled for December and it had to be postponed for various reasons. And I would anticipate we'll be rescheduling another meeting fairly shortly. It was agreed by both local authorities that we, and the meeting, I should say, was facilitated by EMRA, the Eastern Midlands Regional Assembly. And it was agreed that we would go ahead with some of the background work, re-meet or reconvene the meeting at an early stage in this year to discuss the background work that we can proceed. But certainly no, the strategic issues paper we can't proceed because once you do that, you're starting the clock.
Okay, thank you, Sean. So we move on with the notice of motion. So on the basis of that, are we happy to do that? Anyone not happy to do that? I suppose is an easier question.
Chair,
Okay.
if it's okay, Padraig here, it's okay. Maybe I'll come in and maybe I'll answer Councillor Tolan's question as well as providing a background as to how we deal with Drogheda and procedurally it may assist. If I go back to the draft plan for Drogheda, which was put out on public display, I guess the key changes that were brought forward in that plan was that the phase 2 zoning was removed for residential land. And when you compare the two maps, there's significantly more residential zoned land available in the draft plan. than there would have been in the former plan. And the reason being is that the reason that was done was in anticipation and expectation of the joint urban plan being completed together with Louth County Council. What we also need to consider here is the fact that Louth County Council has put out a draft county development plan on public display, which closed just before Christmas 2020 gone by. And in that plan, they took a similar approach to ourselves in that they zoned all residential lands within the Louth County Council area. And again, in anticipation of discussions with ourselves and EMRA and the relevant departments on the order of priority. It is our advice at this stage that we should not change the zonings in anticipation of a joint urban plan that's to be conducted between authorities. We didn't add or take away any residential zone lands at the draft plan stage. All we did was took off the phasing, which I referred to. So I suppose the question for members is how will this all transpire under the joint urban plan? And I suppose the key issue is that there'll be an order of priority identified within the joint urban plan as to which lands will come forward during the life of the joint urban plan. Personally, it's from a planning executive point of view, it's inappropriate to actually identify which lands may or may not be zoned at this stage for Drogheda because the joint urban plan is forthcoming. And I think one of the key issues, and I think it refers, I've just had a brief look at the motions coming forward from Councillor Stephen McKee in terms of transportation issues. I'll also highlight that as part of the background work that Sean Clark has just referred to, there is a transportation study commenced in terms of Drogheda, and that's between Louth County Council and Meath County Council. And that's going to identify the key infrastructure priorities for Drogheda going forward. That transportation study will feed into the joint urban plan. So there's quite a bit of work has commenced in terms of background work, but as Sean rightly points out, we can't obviously put out an issues paper which starts the clock formally on a local area plan until such times as we get our county plan adopted. So Louth County Council are on a similar time frame now to ourselves in terms of the county plan. So it's our advice that we don't deal with any specific issues on the Drogheda plan, and that's not kicking the can down the road. It's more a priority that we identify an appropriate forum, particularly on the residential side and on the transportation side, because the transportation study is being done. I guess if the zoning relates to economic development or community, or that's still appropriately considered within the joint urban plan, but we could highlight and record the issues here and let that form part of the discussions on the joint urban plan. One final thing I would like to say is that the piece of land that is brought up under the notice of motion from Councillor Mead refers to a strategic housing development that was approved and challenged in the High Court by way of judicial review. And as I understand it, it's the land to the west of the town and along the motorway. As I understand it, those lands are currently still under judicial review, and there's potential for appeals to the decision of the High Court and Judge McDonnell. It raises many issues regarding our zoning of land and phase 2. But as I understand it, no challenge has come forward as of yet, but I remain to be corrected that I think it is still under the 8-week consideration for a challenge. So I would advise against, certainly on this piece of land, not taking any action in particular. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Mead.
Thank you, Cahir, and thank you, Pádraig, for explaining things so well. I think it's obvious, and I don't mean to insult Drogheda by saying this, but we are the competent authority, and we've been lead on many things in the past. And I even think of when we built the M1, we were lead authority, something like 15 miles into Drogheda. However, my concern here is that we had a pre-draft stage where maybe we should have finalised or sorted things, and then we had a next draft, and now we're here today. And we're talking about now maybe pushing this on till where we're sitting in a room potentially, Meath councillors on one side, Louth on the other, to decide on zoning. And I would hate to think that on that day, Meath would be going in, and then we'd be trying to finalise things on our own side. Whereas I feel if we have the debate today, and at least then, you know, I might win some votes, I might lose some votes, but at least then we have a Meath position going into the room with County Louth. My fear is that if we progress and we're in that room with County Louth, and then, you know, we're not all singing off the one hymn sheet, because while we're arguing, yes, we need more residential, you might be arguing that we need it there, while I'm arguing that we need it here. I respect that there is a High Court decision on one of the lands that I have two motions relating to, but we shouldn't be as conscious of that as we should be more conscious of when we're zoning, doing the right thing for a town, regardless of whether there's planning permission. Whether you can think of in Ashbourne, Millbrook, there is a planning permission on land. It didn't impact people having to vote. So I would ask councillors not to be worried about High Courts or whether there's planning permissions on it, but to look at the map, be logical, and do what's best for the town in every decision. But I do think we should make these decisions before we meet with Louth County Council, so that Meath and everyone here is singing on the same hymn. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tolan.
Thanks, Cathaoirleach, and thanks for that explainer, Pádraig. I suppose a couple of things. Firstly, you know, these are really big decisions that we potentially will be asked to make. And I think based on motions from the floor that other councillors are completely unaware of, I think it's very difficult for us to make decisions. We had a discussion previously at the start of the process that we would receive the notices of motions. Now, I totally understand today is certainly a different day for all of us, and you know, Sean has outlined that you know, they arrived in this morning to find a number of motions in the inbox that were sent over the weekend. But ideally, we should receive these notices of motions from the floor as councillors the day before the meeting, so that we can do our due diligence and investigate and make decisions. But you know, I was of the understanding, and I have been for some time, that we pretty much were going to park most of the decisions for Drogheda until the joint urban plan is developed. I welcome Pádraig outlining, you know, that the discussion has begun between the two councils, and I would like it noted, I suppose, within the press, there is a perception, and within the public there is a perception that we're not working together, Meath County Council and Louth County Council. That's clearly not the case. We have made progress, and the fact that the transportation study has commenced is very, very welcome. Obviously, transportation in this area is key for both Drogheda and East Meath. However, I am a little concerned that obviously the local councillors were not aware of the transportation study having commenced, and I think that those details need to go out to ourselves to be very clear, and to make sure that the message goes out to the public that we are progressing in that regard. Look, I wouldn't feel comfortable not knowing actually the 6 motions that are highlighted. I have no idea what any of those are, other than the motions that were in the report that we received, that the Chief Executive has already made comments on. So I do think that it's important that we get those clarifications on those, and a clear guidance from the Chief Executive as to what way to move on those motions. But ideally, as I said, and I've said consistently, we need to have the motions from the floor the evening before, at the very least, as councillors, so that we can do our own due diligence and make decisions accurately. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I suppose with regards to what Porrick had said with regards to, and bearing in mind what Councillor Meath had said with regards to having a position, maybe another question that would be, maybe that certainly for myself would be, should we decide to defer this, at what point will the input from the Meath County Council's position take place? When the discussions open with Louth County Council and the joint area plan is devised, at what point if it was deferred to that point from this forum, at what point would the concerns of this forum be manifested, so to speak? When would the input from this take place? Porrick.
Okay, yep, thanks, Chair. As I said, I know Larry and Des had been involved and had the most recent communication with the directors of Louth County Council, so I might invite them just to update the group as to exactly what has happened in terms of the most recent communication on this process. In terms of the issues that the members are outlining, I think it is important that we would at an early stage provide the feedback from a forum such as this. If the changes are not being made here, then the minimum I guess the members will want is that their views are inputted into the issues paper. So there will be, I think what's important, the initial communication, what we have to do is to set up obviously timelines, structures, committees, which members sit on the relevant committees that will feed into this process. So there's a governance structure to be developed, and it was one of the key things that we highlighted to EMRA and the relevant departments in terms of commencing this process, that members will have to have a key input. So there will, whether it's the MD, in fact, the MD members that sit, all or some sit on the relevant governance committees, that's how the key inputs will be put into the early stages, and I mean the very early stages and even the baseline work. So that is all going on in the background. So maybe for the purpose of the meeting, I think I might just defer to Des or Larry to invite them just to comment exactly where the process is at the moment.
Here, look, if I might come in there, yeah, I think as Sean said earlier, we had a discussion with our officials from Louth County Council in November and facilitated by EMRA. Now, it was proposed to have a further meeting just before Christmas, but due to a number of issues on the Louth side, that was actually postponed. Now, we said that we would touch base again in the second week of January, and subject obviously to our meetings in terms of the development plan. Now, I think as Sean said as well, there are objectives in both the draft Meath plan and the Louth plan for the preparation of the UAP. So we will, as I say, be getting back to our colleagues in Louth County Council and EMRA probably in the coming week or so.
Sorry, Des, you wanted to come in there?
Yes, Guy, here, look, just to back up what the lads have said, we had that discussion. There will be further discussions as soon as time permits. And there is a lot of work that can be done in the background before we get to that strategic issues paper, which is when, as Sean says, the clock starts ticking. But I think it'll be important that we brief the councillors, particularly in the MD, as soon as is possible. There will be a number of structures and processes to be put in place, not least that grouping of councillors on the Louth and Meath side. There will also be a need for a steering group and an implementation group as we advance through phases of this plan. But there is work that can be going on in the background, and we have identified some areas, and the transportation piece has been mentioned and is obviously critical. And we will arrange to brief the MD councillors as soon as we can on the progress that we are making in the background and the proposals for the structures and engagement with Louth. Thanks, Cahir.
Thank you, Des. Councillor Harding.
Yeah, thank you, Cahir, and
Thanks to all of you for your input, Des, Larry and Park. So we're at a stage now where there's motions from the floor that we wouldn't have had much time to discuss, and we're looking at the joint urban area plan, and then it's different governance and committees. So are we saying that what we are dealing with now is it's too early to deal with them as our, like, this is the first settlement area and one of the biggest in our county because of its location on the environs of Drogheda. Just clarify where we go from here in relation to the motions that are on the floor that we have not had as Councillor Tolan quite rightly pointed out, have not had time to digest. Where do we go? Do these go to that joint urban area plan, and I understand issues papers and what Des has contributed. Can we get clarification as to where we're going? That's really just my question for Pádraig probably. For now, thanks, Cathaoirleach.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McKee, we just let you in there first before Pádraig comes back with a suggestion.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Cathaoirleach. Yeah, look, thanks for that, Pádraig. And look, I'm well aware that the Chief Executive response to a lot of these motions in affecting the Drogheda, Southern Drogheda environs would have been that there would be no decision pending the approval of the joint urban area plan for the area. Having said that, I've tabled 4 motions there on the basis that they would at least be highlighted and recorded. And my understanding would be that we're here this morning to obviously debate issues really in the area and motions affecting the Southern Drogheda environs, and if those motions are passed or otherwise, that they would form part of the discussions then with Louth County Council. But certainly my intention is to highlight local issues that will form part of the joint urban area plan, and you know, that at least when we go into those meetings that we have a set of priorities for our own area and we've debated and discussed them, and at least we know what we want from the discussions with our colleagues in Louth. So that was my understanding. But look, I'm happy to take direction from yourselves on this. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Pádraig.
Cathaoirleach, I might come in on those questions there.
Sorry, Sean, yeah.
Yeah, no problem. In relation to, I suppose, the process or the timeline, the county development plan must be adopted before we can formally commence the joint urban area plan. Any changes to the joint urban area plan will then result in a variation to the county development plan. I suppose just to reiterate what Pádraig said earlier, what we're asking the councillors in the Laytown Bettystown area to do is not to make any significant changes to the southern environs, which is what went on display in terms of the draft, and Louth County Council have done similar. And then discussions with regards to the southern environs of Drogheda will take place as part of the joint urban area plan. So that's the process. So we can't defer, I suppose, the process until the joint urban area plan. We must adopt a county development plan to allow us to formally commence the joint urban area plan process. It would be anticipated that we could go through the motions. Obviously, Councillor Tolan has said she'd like to see them, and we agree with that. Some of the motions might contradict ones that have come in previous, or might supersede ones that have come in previous. But I suppose just to reiterate, what we've asked is that the draft plan, we're looking to see that the draft plan wouldn't have any major changes to it, so that when we are proceeding with the joint urban area plan, that's when any changes relevant to the MD will take place, and they would then be reflected in a variation to the county development plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. So again, just for clarification purposes, is it suggested that we move through the motions today, or that by and large we defer those motions, or what is by us? And there are also notice of motions that we're unaware of, and unaware of their implications on the current notice of motions. So is the proposal that we would at least defer discussion on the notice of motions until tomorrow, until we have an opportunity to cross-reference them with the new motions, and recommence at that point? Sean, if you want to come in there.
If I come in there, here, look, what we could do is we have 6 notices of motion from the floor. We could go through those. If then the councillor that submitted that notice of motion has superseded that notice of motion via an additional motion received over the weekend, we could then defer that one. But if there are any within the 6 that aren't superseded, we can certainly take them today.
Okay, Councillor Tolan.
Thanks, Catherlough. I think as a local councillor here, right on the verge of the southern environs of Drogheda, and I know my colleagues will attest to this as well, the biggest issue and the biggest complaint we receive from the people of Drogheda, both Drogheda County Meath and Drogheda County Louth, is that people in Navan and Dundalk are making decisions for Drogheda, and the joint urban area plan is one way and the best way to ensure that Drogheda gets the representation that it needs to grow as a town, both the County Meath side and the County Louth side, but that local issues will be dealt with locally. And I do think that we need to be mindful, all of us, of that fact that there was a process there during the Drogheda boundary review. We have the recommendation from the Minister in relation to the joint urban area plan. It is a pathway to ensure that the people we represent feel they are represented locally, and that they don't feel decisions are being made in Navan and Dundalk in the best interests of Drogheda as a town, both the County Meath side and the County Louth side. So I would ask that my colleagues are mindful and that perhaps we do look at, as recommended by Sean and Porrick there, at those technical issues and those zoning issues during that process of the joint urban area plan. I would have said previously that process was far too slow, that we needed to get a move on, but obviously we need to adopt our county development plan first. But I am delighted to hear that there is background progress and studies being carried out in preparation of that. So I do feel that we are much further on in the process of the joint urban area plan than I had previously anticipated. So look, I wouldn't be prepared to make decisions or support motions here this morning that I'm completely unaware of. I have done my due diligence and homework on the motions that were in the report already, and already have a recommendation from the Chief Executive and the planners. So I would prefer to either defer them for us to get a look at those motions, or ask that perhaps our colleagues listen to what Porrick and Sean have suggested, and that we look at the zoning and the nitty-gritty of the Drogheda area when we're carrying out, when we're working on the joint urban area plan for Drogheda. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fox.
Well, I think just you can hear me there. Just in light of what's been the discussion, I know it's not my area, but I think it'd be a good idea to rather defer until tomorrow, until the local members see all the motions, because I think we're shooting in the dark as it is. Would that be, or either, I don't think we can't look at the submissions until we see the motions, I presume.
Yep, that has been the way that we have approached it so far. So
I mean, it would be unless we could talk here for the next hour and still be no further on if the members didn't see the motions. I mean,
Councillor Meath. Councillor, you just unmute yourself, please.
Sorry to hear that, and thanks for bringing me in. For efficiency, I think there is a number of motions we can progress with today that may not be affecting any sort of zoning, and this is in reference to roads and such. But on the broader point, and I'm one of the representatives of Meath County Council on EMRA, and one of the things I've heavily been insisting on EMRA is that when we sit down with Louth County Council, that there's equal voting rights on both sides. So be it that there's 10 councillors from the Louth side and 7 in the Laytown Bettison district, that still we would have the same say. Otherwise, one side could dictate what happens to the other. I don't believe with confidence that that the formula of how this is going to happen has been written. And so go by my earlier point that we should have this fine-tuned in County Meath. And I will accept if I lose votes on zoning, I will accept that that's the Meath stance. And then I'll go into that room with the Meath stance. But by putting off the zoning, you're putting it into what might happen, what agreement may happen with Louth County Council, Meath County Council and Emra. That scenario may have a committee sitting, which includes Gahirlock of Louth County Council on it in a prominent role. He may be from Dundalk. So regardless of giving the power to NAV, and as bad as that might sound, I'm afraid that the plan may be over-dictated by Dundalk and Louth County Council. So I believe it's important that before we sit down with Louth County Council, that we as a county know what we're doing. And we've all sat through many days of the county development plan where many motions have come in on the very same day. In relation to mine, my later motion, I have 5 motions in there in the book that everyone can read, and I think they're well justified. In relation to my 2 later motions, it's a very small thing in relation to a bit of zoning of land. It's very small. You'll understand it very quickly. There's no real complications here, and there's no reason why we shouldn't progress. There'll be much more complicated things in other towns and villages. But for expediency and noting the time, I think we could progress with the motions to do with roadways, playgrounds, busways, or I think Councillor McKee has one in on pull-in spots for buses. I think we could progress with them and maybe give other people time to read the ones on zoning. Thank you.
Councillor Tolan.
Just a point of clarification, the Drogheda Urban Municipal District has 6 councillors. Thanks.
Thank you. I suppose, with regards to the point that Councillor Meath made there, there are the additional complications, I suppose, is that with regards to further discussions around settlements, any of the ones that are purely within the boundary of County Meath are subject entirely to our own discussion, subject obviously to the other frameworks. With regards to Drogheda and Meath, we are reliant on having a position in conjunction with other local authorities. So a question would be, would if we progressed with any of the suggestions as per Councillor Meath, do you feel, Pádraig or Sean, that it would in any way tie your hands in relation to a joint urban plan, that it would have a negative impact going in with this decision made rather than the draft? As per, and again, each of the motions as per the book that we are familiar with, the recommendation is to have no change to the draft. So with regards to that, not wishing to not fully discuss them, it's just something that is it subject or coming off the back of what we've heard with regards to the discussion around the joint urban plan. You know, is it something, if we progress with it, is it something that would restrict our ability to move forward in the best interest of our county?
Yep. Okay, Chair, you can hear me there. Yep. Yes, I suppose an important point to highlight here is that we are not precluded from judging anything here today, because this is a county development plan process, and Southern Drogheda falls within our administrative area. This is the development plan review. Drogheda is one of our settlements. There is a written statement and a map, and members are perfectly entitled to discuss that map. As I outlined earlier, so if members wish to proceed to discuss each of the motions, submissions and issues, there's nothing to stop us doing that. Okay. I highlighted earlier in my presentation that we should leave sort of strategic issues, as I outlined, particularly got to do with residential land. There will be an order of priority added to their residential lands as part of the discussion with Meath or Louth County Council under the joint urban plan. We felt that having all the existing land zoned gave us the strongest position in terms of negotiating with the Louth County Council, and we will each have to agree what's an acceptable level of residential zoning within the Southern Environs and the rest of Drogheda. If at this stage as a whole council, if the members wish to discuss other issues, then be that community, social, educational, commercial or otherwise, they are certainly entitled to discuss in this process. and I suppose the alternative was provided that if we didn't go through each of the notices and motions and submissions in detail, that all of the issues could be minuted and brought forward as a priority in terms of the discussions on developing an issues paper under this joint urban plan. So I suppose, to me, that's where the decision now lies. If we wish to proceed to discuss all motions, submissions and otherwise, we can. There's nothing, I understand, that precludes us from doing so, and if there is, Rory might come in. But the option is there to discuss each of the motions and submissions, or note all the issues raised and bring them forward as part of the issues paper under the joint urban plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Park. Maybe Rory, you might want to come in there.
Yes, legally, Park is correct. This is your development plan. It's Meath's development plan, and legally it's open to Meath to make decisions on the lands in the environs of Drogheda within its functional area. So it's certainly open to the members. It is also open, of course, to the members to express what their views are for the record, so that it can be reflected as part of the joint urban area plan as well. But it is the members' development plan, and it's their decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Rory. And of course, there are the 6 outstanding motions that we're not familiar with as a group as well, that we will need to come back to tomorrow. So if we don't decide to include all of our motions in the issues paper. So I suppose what we need to do now is to decide as a group what we propose to do, and to formalize that. And you know, are we going to go through the motions, or are we going to put the motions into the issues paper? Ultimately, that's the decision we need to make now. I think that the people who have motions might want to put input into that, and then if we're in agreement, we'll go with that. If not, we'll go with what we're in agreement with, if that makes sense to everybody. Councillor Mead.
I would propose we progress and into the motions.
Do we have a seconder for that formal proposal by Councillor Mead? Councillor McKee? Councillor McKee, if you turn on your microphone, please.
Yeah, sorry, I'll second that, yeah.
And then with your hand up, you wanted to speak as well?
Yeah, no, look,
just to support that.
Yeah, I'll support that, just as Rory said. I mean, at the end of the day, it's our county development plan. We don't know what's going to happen with Louth ultimately, but I think it's important that we set out our objectives for the area and that we put our plan in place. So yeah, look, I'm happy that for the motions to be certainly to be looked at.
Okay, look, are we agreed?
Yeah.
We take that silence as agreement from the rest of our of the chamber, the E-chamber.
Well, I would prefer to have a copy of the motions.
Yeah, so what the proposal is that the ones that we don't have, we will be deferring till tomorrow. We won't be addressing those until we all have an opportunity to see them. And as we move through these motions now, if the councillors in question could indicate that any motion that they have submitted overnight, or for want of, well, overnight or over the weekend, if they impact in any way on the motions as we approach them, that they would let us know, and then we will defer that motion also to discussion tomorrow. Are we in agreement? Okay, so we go to notice of motion number 87, Councillor Paddy Mead. Do you have a seconder for that motion?
Maybe Sean wants to bring it.
Oh, sure.
Sean might want to bring it up.
Sean, if you could just bring it up onto the screen, please.
Can you see that there, members?
Thank you. Do you have a seconder for the motion? Please indicate using your raised hand signal just for the... So second, Stephen. Councillor McKee. Councillor Mead.
Thank you, Cahirlock. So to the councillors who are not aware, we're dealing with Drogheda, and Drogheda is now a regional growth town. I'm sure, Cahirlock, you've explained it perfectly, but it is one of the most important towns in our county. For people who are not familiar with Drogheda, one of the issues people would feel with Drogheda is there are serious traffic concerns in Drogheda. And not only does this stunt people in their everyday life progressing to Drogheda, it also stunts development and growth of the town. So my motion is to propose effectively a ring road around Drogheda. It goes from the M1 over to Coke. And in the next motion, you will see how it goes down and includes a new bridge crossing the River Boyne on the east side. This would massively benefit Drogheda. It would massively benefit the Meath side as well as the Louth side. It would take traffic out of the town. It would boost business. It would make the quality of life for people in Drogheda so much better. In the media, more so maybe on LMFM and the Louth papers, we will have heard a lot of talk of the Louth side of this ring road and how there has been massive delays with that. It was expected that that should have happened some years ago. But that is not to take away from what we should be doing. We should be progressing this, and that's what my motion looks to do. I acknowledge that the response to my motion tells me that it is shown now in the map, and I don't know if people have seen the map of Drogheda I hold in front of me, but there is a red dotted line going across here where the proposed ring road will go, and that will be wonderful. The only question I might have to the executive is there is a little stretch at the end where the ring road is not shown, but maybe it is proposed that at that point it will go on to the existing road, and possibly that is the solution there. But again, this is Drogheda, this is the south side of Drogheda.
Sorry, Councillor, if you just, there's no need to hold the map up. I don't think it's of any value to anybody, and people can't see the map.
Right.
As per the notice of motions, any part of the map you wish to indicate needs to be indicated within the motion.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
But no, I'm welcoming the response. I welcome that dotted line is shown there on the map. I just simply ask a question on the little bit of the area where there is no dotted line, because my motion is to connect the M1 to the R132. So there's a little bit of an area where there's no dotted line, and maybe I could get some clarity on that. But assuming that's in order, I'm happy to accept the recommendation. Thank you.
Maybe Pádraig or Sean would like to come back in on that.
Yep, Chair, we've just been looking at that. I think the area, I haven't seen the map, the submission. I don't know if there was a map with the submission from Councillor Meath. I presume the area he's referring to, there was a short area there where the ring road was not included, that takes it all the way up to Culp in Drogheda. So the previous development plan showed the same ring road as the current one, and we didn't propose to continue that all the way up to the R132. That wasn't part of the original local area plan nor the draft plan, and I think we haven't proposed any change here, but I think this is certainly an issue that if it's a ring road for Drogheda and we are to identify additional area for a ring road, that's significant infrastructure in our opinion, and an extension of an existing road. So I would defer that comment until the transportation study, because if it's a ring road, I know there is a proposed large ring road under the Northern Environs local area plan in Drogheda in the Louth County Council section. But if this is to be included, it's something that I think the transportation study should consider, because there is a large ribbon of development along one of the roads, and the implications are significant number of houses would be affected by us extending the current southern road in Drogheda. So I think further consideration would have to be given to that rather than putting a line on a map. So there may have been some confusion as to which line Councillor Meath was referring to, but I think he's clarified it today that if that road is to go all the way up to Culp, then that section of road wasn't included for upgrade. But there are significant implications if we do put a line on a map here today. So the proposal would be to consider this as part of the transportation study, that if it's to form part of a larger ring road, then we must consider that.
Thank you, Pádraig. Des?
Yes, just to echo what Pádraig has said, this will be considered as part of the transportation element of the work that we referred to earlier. So I'd suggest that we just defer this piece of Councillor Meath's motion until then. I think the rest of the road is shown and Councillor Meath is satisfied with that. But this piece will come up in the transportation work which has commenced, and this is obviously one of the key pieces of infrastructure for Drogheda. So this particular element should await those further studies and reports to be done, and we'll revert to you at that stage.
Councillor Meath?
Well, thank you, Cahir, and thank you, Executive and Pádraig, for your responses. I am disappointed, however, because I thought that my motion was clear, and this goes back to where we should have had this debate at the pre-draft. But no, I am clear that I do, because we can carry out studies in that, but we do have we should have the 7 local councillors at this meeting, and we are very familiar with the area. And we would argue that that road is not just needed, it is warranted. And we would also argue potentially the benefit that that would bring to the area, and that a ring road to that side of Drogheda, you know, if anyone's looking at the map now, you have 90% of it there, and if you just leave 10% off, you don't get it, the ring road. So the road needs to be upgraded. That line should be put on the map, and that's what I propose. I thought it was just a clerical error, but it was not. So I now don't accept the manager's response, and I ask that the dotted line be extended. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I suppose with regards to and being cognizant of what was said to us with regards to the traffic management or the transport plan and the impacts of a few dots on a map, I think it's a little bit more significant than that, and the impact of that. So we're going to move to actually have a vote on this, whether to accept the Chief Executive's report or not, and that will be the question that will be put to you. So the question will be, are we in agreement with the Chief Executive's recommendation? If we are in agreement, please indicate at that time by using the raised hand function, and then we'll indicate that that period of time has passed, and then the question will be put that are you anybody not in agreement, and at that time, please, having removed your hand if you were in agreement, that at that point then you would raise your hand to indicate that you are not in agreement with the Chief Executive's report. So what we'll do please don't do it yet, just when you're asked. We want to put the question now, are we in agreement with the Chief Executive's report, which is of no change? So are we in agreement with the Chief Executive's report? Please indicate your support or your agreement. Okay, 10.
Tommy Riley's got his hand up, so I'm taking that as a letter.
And again, it's important that you can use the raised hand function. Okay. And then anyone not in agreement, please if you take down your hands now, please remove their hand, so we'll have everybody will have no hand up.
Excuse me.
Somebody say excuse me there.
Yeah, Joe Bonner. Yeah, okay. I actually had my hand up for a question before I went to the vote.
But it didn't flag. It didn't flag.
No, but I had my hand. Well, it flagged on my screen, so it was up there.
Anybody else notice it? That's very unusual. What's the question, Councillor?
Yeah, it was just I just wanted a bit of clarity. Like, what are the consequences
if we don't accept the manager's report in light of what Councillor Meath has said. Finished, yeah.
Sorry, okay. So the consequences are that we'll have to find a way of putting a little bit of a few lines on the map somewhere. That's the question. That a vague aspiration to put a few lines on the map, dots on the map. That's what we're asked to do.
And it's only a proposed road. It's not that we're compulsory purchasing land. It's not that it's going to be happening overnight. It's only an aspiration, a proposal.
So again, the hands. So the question. We're going to put this question again. Okay. Could everybody please take their hand?
If you don't mind, I also had my hand raised before the proposal, before the.
Okay, Councillor Adenuga.
Yes, apologies, Kahilok. I also had.
Sorry, Councillor Bonner, could you take your hand down, please? Thank you, Councillor Adenuga.
Yes, I had my hand raised earlier before the call for the vote. I just wanted a clarity.
Okay.
What I wanted clarity on was that the CEO's recommendation is that the motion goes as part of the study in transportation. Is that it?
Yes, Pádraig, if you just clarify what the recommendation means and also reiterate what you had already highlighted to us.
Okay, Chair. Thank you very much. I've just been checking for Councillor Meath's motion, and can I differentiate between and clarify for the members on the Drogheda map at the very southern end of the zoning. There is a red dotted line identified for a proposed road, and that takes it from the M1 to Southgate Shopping Centre. There is an area there is a road from Southgate Shopping Centre that is called Culp Road that takes you up to the crossroads at Culp itself, or the T-junction. And it's this piece of road which Councillor Meath is referring to. So I expect that road is a relatively new road and it would be acceptable subject to any upgrades. But it is an existing road that's there. The justification for adding the dotted line on an existing road is not known as to why we would include an additional highlighted, because the remainder of the road from Southgate Shopping Centre going west to the M1 is not in existence, and that is why we included a red dotted line on the Southern Environs map. The road then from, as I said, the Southgate Shopping Centre up to the T-junction at Culp is already in existence and is of a sufficient size and standard, I guess, for taking traffic. The question would be if it would become a ring road around the entirety of Drogheda. Is it big enough? Which, in my opinion, is a technical consideration that should be considered under a transportation study. So to summarise, the dotted red line is a proposed road that's for Southern Environs, and the reason we didn't extend that from Southgate Shopping Centre up to the Culp is that the road is already there and is called the Culp Road. Hopefully that clarifies issues for members. Thank you.
So are we clear on that? Does everybody understand? Everybody clear on everyone's questions answered? Councillor Bonner and Councillor Adenuga?
Yeah, it is, yeah. Just a matter, is my hand still showing as being up? Because
No, it's down now, yeah.
Okay, but yeah, it's been showing up anyway, it's fine, thank you. That answers my question, thank you.
And Councillor Adenuga?
Yeah, that's answered my question. Thank you, Kahila.
Okay. So again, we put the question. We might just go through roll call first for this, as this is our first vote on this. And just to clarify, get back into the swing of things, I suppose. So with regards to the question will be put to you. Are you in agreement with the Chief Executive's recommendation? And if you are in agreement with the Chief Executive's recommendation, you can indicate that in a positive way. And then the question will be asked to you, are you not in agreement with the Chief Executive's recommendation? And you can indicate that as you wish to indicate that as well, your support for not being in agreement. So what we're going to do is we start off the the roll call, and Robert is going to do it, and then we will announce the results of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Councillor Adanuga,
Agreed.
Councillor Behan. Is Councillor Behan, has he left the meeting?
Is it? No, he's not. Councillor Behan, could you please indicate?
Agree.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bonner.
Agree.
Thank you, Councillor Bray.
Agree.
Councillor Cassidy.
Agree.
Councillor Francis Dean is not at the meeting. Councillor Dempsey. What was that? Councillor
Agree.
Dempsey? Agreed. Thank you. Councillor Drew. Is Councillor Drew on the meeting?
Absent.
Councillor Fitzsimons. Councillor Fitzsimons has left the meeting.
We can't hear Robert Cahirlock.
You can't hear Robert.
I can't hear Robert calling names.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Is that better? Can you hear me?
No.
Yeah.
Just 1 second.
Can you hear me now?
Sort of an echo, you can hear it.
I can hear him.
Yeah, I can hear.
Can you hear now, Jerry? Councillor O'Connor?
Very vaguely, your hearing aid batteries must be gone.
Yeah.
I don't know where we are in the vote. That's the problem I have. So we want to shout my name so that I can vote.
O'Connor.
Okay, so what I will do is I'll call the name of the person as well. Okay, so when Robert calls it, I'll call it so anybody can hear it. Okay, so we're at Councillor Fitzsimons.
Agree.
Councillor Fox.
Councillor Fox.
Agree.
Councillor French.
Councillor French.
Not at the meeting. Councillor Gallagher. Not at the meeting.
Councillor Gallagher.
Councillor Garrity Smith. Not present.
Councillor Garrity Smith.
Councillor Gilroy.
Agree.
Councillor Golden.
Councillor Golden.
Not present. Councillor Harding.
Councillor Harding.
Agree.
Councillor Jamal.
Councillor Jamal.
Agree.
Councillor Keogan. Not at the meeting.
Councillor Keogan.
Councillor Killian.
Councillor Killian.
Not at the meeting. Councillor Laws.
Councillor Laws.
Not at the meeting. Councillor McCabe.
Councillor McCabe.
Disagree.
Disagree.
Councillor McGinty. Not present.
Councillor McGinty.
Councillor McKee.
Councillor McKee.
Agree.
Councillor Mead.
Councillor Mead.
Disagree.
Councillor Moore.
Councillor Moore.
Not present. Councillor Murphy.
Councillor Murphy.
Councillor Murphy. Not present. Councillor O'Connor.
Councillor O'Connor.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Councillor O'Neill.
Councillor O'Neill.
Not present. Councillor O'Reilly Damien.
Councillor O'Reilly Damien.
Agree.
Councillor Riley Sarah.
Councillor Sarah Riley.
Present. Councillor Riley Tommy.
Agree.
Councillor Smith.
Councillor Smith.
Not present.
Amanda.
Councillor Suhan. Eve Suhan.
Councillor Suhan.
Agree.
Agree.
Councillor Tobin. Alan Tobin.
Councillor Tobin.
No longer present. Councillor.
Disagree.
Disagree.
Sorry. Councillor Tobin.
Councillor Tobin.
Not present. Councillor Tolan.
Councillor Tolan.
I agree.
Councillor Toole.
Councillor Toole.
Councillor not present. Councillor Tormey.
Councillor Tormey.
No longer at the meeting.
Thank you.
17 agree, 3 disagree.
So the result is that 17 agree with the chief executive's recommendations, 3 disagreement, and the balance not present. So, okay, so that's notice of motion 87. We move on to notice of motion 88. So we have a seconder for that. We have a seconder for the motion. Do we have a seconder for the motion, anybody, please?
Seconded, Paul McCabe.
Councillor McCabe, seconded the motion. Thank you. Councillor Meath. Councillor, if you please unmute your microphone, thank you.
Sorry, you can hear like first time on Zoom, not used to it.
I doubt that, Councillor.
First time in a council meeting on Zoom.
Thank you.
So, here, look, I suppose this motion is very similar to the last one, and we're probably going to have the same debate and probably the same vote with the same result. This would be me looking to extend that red dotted line across the River Boyne. I'll just tell you quickly the merits of this. So I am looking for a ring road around the south side of Drogheda. I do want a new bridge on the east side of Drogheda. This, even people might be aware of this, the old Dublin Road before the M1 was built, all the traffic came down through Julianstown. And the sad reality is it still does. Still an awful lot of that traffic, be it that's avoiding the toll or what have you, is coming down that road. But while the Meath councillors get very worked up about that and about Julianstown, a lot of that traffic then goes on down through the town of Drogheda, across the old East Bridge and into the Drogheda Environs. If there was a loop road around Drogheda and there was a new bridge on the east side of Drogheda that this traffic could then go across, it would ease up an awful lot of the traffic going through Drogheda. And note that the Peace Bridge, that the Dublin Road down to it, these are not retail streets. These are not roads where business is going to be lost. This is a very much a strong benefit to Drogheda. And that was the reason behind my motion, just to strengthen this in a way. But I acknowledge now the executive could respond in a similar way as they did the last time. And it would go to a vote, and I acknowledge that the vote would probably be 17-3 as well. So I would like my dissent noted, but I'm happy to move on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So Councillor Meath is happy for the motion to accept the Chief Executive's recommendation. So we agreed to move on. Anyone not in agreement?
By myself.
Councillor Meath. Okay, notice of motion 90. Just before we progress any further, just looking at the with regards to where we are time-wise, we're 1:05 now, so we've been 3 hours into the meeting. I think it's going rather well. There's a feeling that maybe we have to come back to Drogheda tomorrow with regards to the additional motions, the notice of motions tomorrow, the 6th. There's a suggestion that perhaps we would maybe adjourn the meeting after very shortly to the morning. So is that something that we're in agreement with? Till tomorrow afternoon, sorry, tomorrow afternoon, 2 o'clock.
Agreed.
If that
Agreed.
So we take maybe one more motion, and then we pause and we recommence then tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Are we agreed on that?
Yeah.
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay.
Yeah.
So we will take notice of motion number 90, and which again is Councillor Paddy Mead. Is that in any way impacted by tomorrow or by the unknown notice of motions? I suppose, Councillor.
I suppose it won't, because
sorry, 89. Sorry, Dominic, 89.
Sorry, 89 is impacted in theory. It could be impacted by residential.
Okay, so maybe that was the perfect time to adjourn, and we can then resume tomorrow at 2 o'clock if we're in agreement, and yeah. We'll also have the opportunity to reflect on the notice of motions that were submitted over the weekend. Are we in agreement, everybody?
Yes, agreed.
Yeah. Excellent.
Agreed.
So,
Agreed, yeah.
Just to thank everybody for their... Okay. Councillor Riley, Damien?
Thank you, Coherlock. No, I'd just like to express my thanks to the planning staff, management, and all the councillors who made it today. They were capable of pressing the on button on an iPad and attending this today. So well done to everyone. I think it's worked extremely well. Anyone that has technology difficulties, they can be overcome. So fair play to everyone in accordance with public health advice. Well done. I look forward to tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Alan Tobin.
Get the microphone. I want to just thank you, Chair, for your patience in the process today, and the pace was very good. I found it wasn't rushed. People were able to explain things, and the maps were put up before us. And I'm using the iPad with SharePoint, but I'm using the phone for the maps and for the other information. And I have to say it worked quite well. I'm actually using 3 different screens here because I'm communicating with my party as well on a third computer. But it's been very, very worthwhile. And any of those fears that people had, I think they can be dismissed now. And I really do hope that the others come along now and participate, and we really go ahead and make a difference to our county. Thanks to everyone, and thanks to the executive as well for the efforts that they put in.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fox.
Yes, that's right.
Just to reiterate what the others have said, I think I can compliment you, Chair, and the staff and all the management who put all this together. I think it's trying times. I think it's not easy doing it, but we've got through it, and it looks like it will work. It's going to take time, but we've no other option. And I think I'd urge other councillors that are not here today to engage in the process, because you're missing out, you know. And we need it's our plan, and there's no point in throwing the toys out of the pram. We are where we are, and we have to just live with it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cassidy.
Thanks, Chair. Just compliment you on a job well done today. And as we can see, it is moving forward well. It's actually moving at a very good pace. And just one question I would like, and maybe Robert could clarify it. And this is in relation to why other councillors are not here today. For the last 9 months, we've been having some Zoom meetings at municipal area levels. And all councillors have been participating at that. And the question I'm asking is, how many councillors have missed municipal area meetings for A, because they couldn't use the technology, or B, because they hadn't got broadband? Thank you.
That's something that might require a little bit of a research, Councillor. But
not really. It's about 6 meetings each we've had, and I think 5 minutes to sort that out.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Coherlock. First of all, well played today. I think you chaired the meeting very well, and I think the information given from the planning department and from the executive was first rate. We made progress, and I too would like to see that the councillors who have excluded themselves from this process would reconsider, considering how successful this was. And just to put something into perspective, I'm safe here. And I'm not going to infect anyone if I get COVID, because I'm behind the screen, and we all conducted this meeting safely. When we can reconvene on the 9th of November with the hybrid meetings, the level of new cases in the country is 1,170% higher now than it was then. And the level of new cases in Meath is 1,100% higher now than it was then. This is the only way we should do it, to keep our constituents and our colleagues safe and in compliance. And we can still make the progress, and we can still get through this and use this time to progress the county development plan. Thank you, Coherlock.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Harding. We get to you, Councillor O'Reilly now, and then thank you, Councillor Harding.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. I just want to add my words to those that have gone before me on complimenting you on what you've done today, and well done. And indeed, the executive and all of the planning staff. It has gone well. The other points are well made. We're all on devices and have been for a year now. There's a lot of experience in relation to that now. The only device I haven't been in contact with my party colleagues. I didn't use a device to do that. So thank you, Cathaoirleach, and thanks to the executive, and well done today. Talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Riley. Tommy.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach, and congratulations on doing a great job this morning. And I want to congratulate the Chief Executive and our planning team and the rest of the staff for ensuring we had a very successful morning. And as Councillor O'Connor said, we all feel very safe in our own homes. Thank you again, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. And Jackie.
Cathaoirleach and members, look, I really just want to express my sincere gratitude to the Cathaoirleach for all his work in getting us far today. It's been, you know, I think he's put a personal energy into trying ensuring that as you know, members who still have issues about whether they should have attended or not all weekend. I know he did try to persuade and ensure and I suppose give people the assurance that everything would go well. And I think this morning has proof of that. So Cathaoirleach, I personally want to thank you for that. And I personally want to thank each and every one of the members who have participated. To some extent, I think to some way it has gone a little bit easier sitting where I've sat from the hybrid, because you both have to watch the audience that were in Solstice and you also had to watch online. I think it's actually proved a point in that we're all in the one position watching the one screen. So members, can I really just thank you for participating this morning and for your contributions. Personally, from where I said I think it went well, and I really do want to thank my planning team headed out by Pádraig. They did a great job this morning. And look, where there was issues, if there was issues, if you want to feed anything back into us, we'll certainly take them on board to make the continuation of this process over the coming weeks as seamlessly and as easy as possible for everybody.
Thank you, Jackie. Councillor Adenuga.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to join my voice to say well done to you, Cathaoirleach, for the way you've conducted the meeting so far. It's been seamless. I know people have had, you know, concerns about how it was going to run, but so far it ran so well and so smoothly. So well done. And I also wanted to say well done to the council for a great job in ensuring that everyone who is present here today was able to engage smoothly through the connection. I want to encourage as well that we try and reach out to those who didn't link in today. Yes, people might not feel that they are that IT savvy yet until they try it. So while some might still be very adamant to not participate, I would say we still put out an olive branch for one last chance to encourage people to link in, because the meetings will continue, whether people link in or not. So we just give that one more go and encourage them to link in. And if they have challenges, like I'd mentioned earlier on, maybe there could be, even if it's one workshop to help people link in properly. But well done overall, and well done to everyone who's linked in today.
Thank you. And Jackie, you just want to come back in there, do you?
Yes, sorry, maybe just Cathaoirleach, on Councillor Cassidy's question on relation to, and look, it's only a guess at the moment, Councillor Cassidy, but and we will confirm this, we'll do it through all of it, but I would be quite sure that, particularly at MD level, nearly every member participated online at the MD meetings, and we do have a record of those members that participated at the 16 special planning meetings online to date. And as I said earlier at the start of the meeting, it was about maybe 5 or 6 that we would have contacted directly who we knew had never participated online at the special planning meetings, and we contacted them last week to ensure, A, do they need a room, a position that had would ensure connectivity from a network point of view, and was there other issues that they needed training, additional issues around IT. And as I say, Councillor Meath responded, as did Councillor Tommy Riley, but then Councillor Tommy Riley didn't need it in the end, but that facility will be available to him. should there be broadband issues within their locality. So I would be quite sure that every member has participated online at an MD meeting. And I'll clarify if I'm incorrect in that.
Thank you, Jackie. Obviously, I'd like to thank you all for your kind words. This is only day one of our new forum, so it mightn't be as flattering next time we meet, or by the time we get to the end of it. But I do appreciate it. Without everybody's participation, it wouldn't have been possible for the meeting to run so smoothly. Also, it'd be very important that we don't say anything that makes it more difficult for our colleagues to participate into the future. And we do wish and we do hope that they will. Now that the first day is over, oftentimes when you see how things go, and that the positive message to how the meeting ran, it's important that message comes from this meeting, and also the fact that we are very, very, very anxious for them to participate with us, and again to continue to work with them in order to alleviate their concerns that can be alleviated, and after that, it's up to ourselves. We're all adults and we're all involved in the democratic process. It's important that our voices are heard. But it's also that we accept the democratic decisions that are made, even if they don't go our way. So thank you very much again, everybody who participated. And also I'd like to thank the technical team who in the background there, who've been sitting, making sure that we were all able to hear each other and all of those good things. But most importantly, to the people who participated. And hopefully we will be able to make similar progress tomorrow. And after all, we didn't get down to the business of voting on many things today. And that's really where the business will start from tomorrow. And 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, same place. Enjoy and mind yourselves this afternoon, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks,
Chair. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.